Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Stephanie Scott. Stephanie Scott is 26 years old, a kind and intelligent person who always has a smile on her face. She was very active as a child, participating in school clubs and sports. As an adult, she followed in her father Robert's footsteps as a teacher, sharing his passion for education. She teaches English and drama at Leon High School and takes great pride in her work. Stephanie and her fiancé Aaron have known each other since they were children. They spent time together, shared common interests, and played sports in their hometown. They were best friends until Aaron turned 21, when their relationship blossomed into love. In April 2015, the couple was busy preparing for their wedding, scheduled for April 11th. Stephanie, a perfectionist, spent months planning every detail, from the preparations to their honeymoon in Tahiti. She had just had her bachelorette party and the couple had learned their first dance for their wedding day. Everything was almost ready, but sadly their dream did not come true. April 2015 was a reminder to Stephanie and Aaron that their wedding day was approaching. While Aaron had plans to attend a party in the suburbs, he invited Stephanie to come along, but she decided to stay and focus on finishing up work before their honeymoon. On Easter Sunday, April 5, 2015, Stephanie arrived at her school in Leon, New South Wales, at around 11 a.m. to hand over some work to her teacher. She parked her car on the street and walked to meet a colleague, with whom she unlocked the school gate. Stephanie then locked the gate and, key in hand, headed to the English teacher's office. There, she emailed a bus company to confirm transportation arrangements for her wedding guests. Stephanie spent a few hours working, feeling happy that she had completed all her tasks. When she was done, she left the administration building, heading toward the gate to leave. Aaron, knowing that Stephanie had left and would be away for a few hours, became anxious as the evening approached. He had texted her the day before and received a prompt response. However, on April 5th, he received no response from Stephanie. Returning home after 7 p.m., Aaron found that Stephanie had not returned, and her car was not on the street. He tried to control his anxiety, reassuring himself that the stress of the upcoming wedding and being away from school for such a long time might be affecting Stephanie, making her want some alone time. However, such complete silence was out of character for her. Even as she eagerly planned her wedding, Stephanie enjoyed every minute, eagerly sharing details about her wedding dress and menu. She did not appear nervous or bored, but instead excited and ready for her big day. Aaron's concern for Stephanie grew, and he couldn't sleep. The next morning, he sent her another text, but when he didn't receive a response, he decided to contact her family for support. It had been more than 24 hours since he had been unable to reach Stephanie, prompting Aaron to go to the Leon Police Department to officially report her missing. Police opened an investigation, beginning with a search of the area around Stephanie's last known location. When they discovered that her car was also missing, they began to speculate about what might have happened. One possible scenario was that Stephanie had left school and gotten into a car accident, or perhaps gotten stuck in a ditch or creek. A search effort was launched, with helicopters scanning the area from above and police units conducting ground searches. Last known location of the high school where she worked. Affected by Easter Sunday and the limited number of people at the school, there were few witnesses, complicating the police investigation. When they checked the school's alarm system, they discovered that Stephanie had turned it off in her classroom at 1:30 p.m. and turned it back on 8 minutes later, pinpointing her exact location at that time. However, this detail was the only information the police were able to gather. When they attempted to track Stephanie's phone, they discovered that it was turned off and there was no recent activity on her bank account or social media after Saturday, April 4th. Local news began reporting the story on April 7th, as hundreds of people in the small town searched for any information about Stephanie. Stephanie's mother, Marilyn, expressed concern that if her daughter was not found soon, it could indicate that something terrible had happened. Police refocused their search efforts on the school, using digital mapping technology to examine the premises and pinpoint the specific room where Stephanie was last seen working before she went missing. A witness who was near Leon High School on Easter Sunday reported hearing unusual noises around 2 p.m., including rustling and dragging sounds. At the time, the witness did not think much of seeing Stephanie's car parked under the covered walkway. However, the car was gone by then. Another witness, a school employee, had a strange conversation with a cleaner the day after Stephanie went missing. The employee mentioned the rumors surrounding Stephanie's disappearance to the cleaner and asked when he had last seen her. The cleaner replied that he had not seen Stephanie on the day she went missing. When asked if he thought Stephanie might have run away due to post-wedding stress, the cleaner smiled strangely and nervously, making the employee feel uncomfortable. The employee also noticed that the cleaner had scratches on her face. The police decided to question the cleaner, 24-year-old Vincent Stanford, for more information. Vincent told the police that he had stopped by the school to take out the trash, despite not being scheduled to work that day. He claimed that he did not stay long because he was in a hurry to go shopping. Vincent insisted that he had not seen Stephanie at the time and wished them luck in their search. He added that he had left the school after 3 p.m. to go to the store where he usually shopped. However, when the police contacted the store, they discovered that it was closed that day, contrary to Vincent's statement. This led the police to suspect Vincent of lying, and he became a suspect in the investigation. The police decided to conduct a thorough interview with Vincent and went to his home where he lived with his mother. When they arrived, they found Vincent absent, but his mother allowed them to enter the house. The police search of the house eventually uncovered a set of keys attached to a red and white string. These keys were very similar to the missing Stephanie's keys. As the police continued to collect evidence, Vincent returned home and was immediately arrested by the police, while his car was also impounded. In the back seat, they found several MDF boards that appeared to be covered in blood. The police also noticed that the tire marks in front of the house did not match those of Vincent's car. Additionally, a used condom was found on the ground with the wrapper in the bedroom. The police questioned Vincent about his whereabouts that day. He pointed to a camera in the front seat and claimed that he was taking pictures. The police asked to see the contents of the camera, and Vincent reluctantly agreed. When they turned on the camera, they saw a horrifying image of a charred, dead woman lying in a wooded area. Vincent initially tried to dismiss the image as a still from a movie he had starred in, thinking it was funny. However, the police quickly realized that the image was actually a photo of a real crime scene, with the victim being Stephanie. Vincent Stanford, a janitor at Leon High School, was immediately arrested. A search of his phone and laptop revealed a collection of images, including photos of young girls from school and from the internet, as well as photos of women he had apparently stalked. The discovery painted a dark picture of Vincent's behavior. Although Stephanie Scott's body has not been found, Vincent Stanford, 24, was charged with murder on April 9th. News of the arrest spread quickly. Stephanie's car had previously been found abandoned in a remote area about 5 miles from where she was last known to be. However, her body remains missing, prompting the search to continue. Police are still working to determine the exact location where her body was photographed. On April 17th, 5 days after Stephanie went missing, another witness came forward. He reported seeing a car near a canal around 4 p.m. on Easter Sunday. A man got out of the car and threw what appeared to be a laptop into the water before driving away. Police later recovered the laptop from the bottom of the canal, confirming it was Stephanie's. The search for Stephanie's body continues in the New South Wales Rivers area, where police divers have been scouring the waterways. Reporter Natalie Cooper, in a live broadcast, discussed the ongoing search for Stephanie's body. Meanwhile, police have expanded their search to fields and vineyards near where Stephanie's red Mazda was found earlier this week. Despite a search by police divers in the canal, Stephanie's body has not been found. Reporter Natalie reported that a makeshift shrine near the site of the tragedy was visited by many people that morning. Bystanders and her family and fiancé had visited the shrine the night before, surname lighting candles and praying together. Vincent, who was in police custody, asked to speak to the police. During the conversation, he gave them detailed information about the case, including the location of Stephanie's body. According to Vincent, on the day of the incident, Stephanie was working on her computer in the upstairs staff room with the office door open. Vincent was using a vacuum to clean out the trash and needed to move some bins upstairs. As he approached the room, he saw Stephanie. Vincent told the police that he suddenly had the idea of killing her and quickly went home to get his special kit, which included handcuffs, Viagra, a knife, and toiletries. He also did a Google search on violent crimes on the way back. On his way back, Vincent encountered Stephanie as she was leaving. She smiled and wished him a happy Easter as she passed by. However, in a sudden and unexpected move, Vincent grabbed her and dragged her into a nearby storage room. When police questioned him about the scratches on his face, he revealed that they were from Stephanie's microphone and her fingernails when she defended herself while he tried to kill her. Vincent described the attack on Stephanie in detail, saying that he approached her from behind, covered her mouth with one hand and held her waist with the other. He took her to the storage room, slamming the door. Inside, he violently threw her to the ground, hitting her repeatedly. After the attack, Vincent used a knife to kill Stephanie. He admitted that the act was motivated by homicidal urges, revealing that he had sadistic thoughts and had committed murders before. Although he speculated that he may have had some psychological issues, Vincent said that he did not hate his victims but instead felt pleasure from the act of killing. Vincent then felt hungry and went home to eat a sandwich and drink coffee, leaving Stephanie's body in the storage room. After eating, he returned to the school and placed her body in the trunk of his car. He then drove home. On Easter Monday, Vincent took Stephanie's car and drove to a national park. There, he removed her body from the trunk and removed her clothes. He observed that her face had multiple injuries, including severe bruising and swelling on the right side of her face, as well as bruising under her eye. Vincent then covered the body with branches and poured gasoline over her. He lit the gasoline with a match. Before leaving, he stayed at the scene for a while and took several photographs. After setting up the camera to take pictures of Stephanie's body, Vincent waited 5 minutes to ensure the fire had burned out before leaving the scene. He abandoned Stephanie's car on a deserted country road and walked back to town. During questioning, Vincent denied abusing Stephanie despite police evidence suggesting he had abused her, leading to additional charges of causing grievous bodily harm and injury. When questioned about her earrings and wedding ring, he claimed he did not remember taking them off and may have thrown them away with the other items. In fact, Vincent took Stephanie's wedding ring and graduation ring, along with her earrings, and sent them to his twin brother, Marcus, in Adelaide. Marcus sold the items at a jewelry store and later destroyed Stephanie's driver's license after taking a photo of it. Vincent's brother Marcus Stanford, 24, was arrested at his Adelaide Hills home around 7 a.m. in connection with Stephanie's murder, leaving neighbors shocked and unsettled. Marcus, who appeared inconspicuous, worked on a flower farm, where colleagues described him as quiet and reserved, barely communicating with them outside of work hours. Marcus Stanford appeared without a lawyer during the trial and, with a strong Dutch accent, told the judge he had never been to Leeton and saw no reason to go there. Despite his testimony, he was taken to Sydney the following morning under police escort, where he was taken into custody. The search for Stephanie finally ended. Following Vincent's confession, police discovered her body in a national park 60 miles from Leon's secondary school. Detailed investigations revealed that Stephanie had been brutally beaten in the head a total of 40 times, resulting in her death. Her body was then dumped and burned. Photos found on Vincent's phone were confirmed to be of Stephanie, leaving no doubt as to his guilt. Both Vincent and his brother, Marcus, were subsequently brought to trial. Vincent initially denied any wrongdoing. However, based on the evidence presented by the police, it was decided that the case could lead to a conviction. Vincent was deemed a dangerous serial killer. He appeared to lack emotion and empathy, was cruel and indifferent, often laughing and not taking the situation seriously. A deeper look into Vincent Stanford's past revealed a number of disturbing facts. Born in Australia, Vincent moved to the Netherlands with his family when he was 3 years old before eventually returning to New South Wales. As a child, Vincent had disturbing thoughts. At age 7, he fantasized about murder. By age 12, he had nearly strangled a teacher, leading his classmates to label him a psychopath. Due to his violent and disobedient behavior issues, Vincent was sent to a reform school. He later expressed feelings of being unable to fit in with society and was later admitted to a psychiatric facility, where he was diagnosed with autism and oppositional defiant disorder. Vincent was rejected by both the university and the army after his release, so he worked a variety of jobs until he landed a job as a janitor at Leon Junior High School. His initial 5-week contract was later extended, allowing him to continue working at the school. During his time there, Vincent would often sneak into the girls' restroom during lunch breaks to secretly observe the students. An investigation of Vincent's phone revealed that he had been stalking several girls at the school, as well as 2 women who worked at nearby stores, before finally killing Stephanie. Police discovered a large collection of photos, nearly 2,000, of a young girl on his phone, along with diary entries documenting his obsession with the girl. In these diary entries, Vincent detailed his attempts to follow the girl home, recording her departures and even speculating about whether anyone else was with her. One diary entry stated, "She was home alone at 3:40 p.m., plenty of time to kidnap her." It appears that Vincent initially targeted the young girl, but once she left town, he shifted his focus to Stephanie, who worked at the school and was ultimately his victim. After a thorough search of Vincent's car, police found evidence of Stephanie's DNA on MDF boards. Inside Vincent's house, they discovered Stephanie's blood on several items, a knife, several condom packs, and her bra. Vincent's twin brother, Marcus, admitted to his role in the crime, including selling Stephanie's ring, destroying evidence, and helping Vincent cover up the truth. As a result, Marcus was sentenced to 15 months in prison without the possibility of parole. His sentence was for his involvement in the murder of Stephanie Scott, and his prison term was set to end on September 9, 2016. If Marcus had not pleaded guilty, he would have received an 18-month sentence. In October 2016, Marcus Stanford was released from prison. After his release, more than 60 people signed a petition expressing their disagreement with the court's decision and asking for an appeal. The petition describes the court's decision as unacceptable. After his release, Marcus briefly returned to his hometown of Leon with his mother. However, people in his hometown made it clear that he was not welcome, forcing him to leave again. His current whereabouts are unknown. Since his release, Marcus has publicly apologized for his actions and promised not to cause any more trouble. He has admitted that his past behavior was foolish and has expressed remorse for the harm he has caused. Marcus has also stated that he has no intention of contacting his brother Vincent and does not want to reconcile with him. Steve, the twins' father, he is shocked, scared, and does not want to talk to or see Vincent. Steve admits that he does not understand why Vincent committed these crimes. Vincent Stanford was sentenced to life in prison for murder and 15 years for sexual violence, both sentences effective April 8, 2015. Stephanie's mother, Marilyn, expressed her grief, saying that Vincent could not cope with his own life, so he took her daughter's life. Marilyn believed that this deprived Stephanie of the chance to have a happy future. Although the family did not know the full extent of Stephanie's pain, they knew that she had suffered unbearable pain. Therefore, the family wanted to stay away from the public to mourn their daughter and overcome the pain. In the future, Stephanie's family members have decided not to participate in interviews or television shows or answer questions. However, they have planned a final celebration. The day after the trial, Stephanie's family planned a gathering to remember her life on what would have been her 28th birthday, a birthday they would celebrate for the second time without her. They held a 3 p.m. tea party with peppermint cookies, which Stephanie's mother invited everyone to attend. In addition, the family is campaigning for stricter background checks and assessments for school staff in the hope of preventing incidents like the one that affected Stephanie and reducing the risk to students. After Stephanie's tragic death, the family suffered another tragic loss when her father, Robert, died in an accident involving a falling tree. He was buried near his daughter. Her boyfriend, Aaron, in an attempt to escape the painful memories of New South Wales, moved to Europe. However, he eventually found love again and became engaged to a woman named Samantha 5 years after Stephanie's death. The case of Lori Vallow. Chad Daybell was born on August 11, 1968, in Provo, Utah, a small town 18 miles south of Salt Lake City. He grew up in a humble family and was a quiet, shy child. In school, Chad was an average student with no standout talents or athletic skills, and he often felt self-conscious about his weight. After graduating from high school, Chad enrolled at Brigham Young University, BYU, in Utah, overcoming several challenges to do so. He a bachelor's degree in journalism in 1992. While in college, he married a woman named Tammy. The couple quickly had 5 children, 3 sons, Seth, Mark, and G, and 2 daughters, Emma and Leah. After completing his education, Chad worked as an editor for a local newspaper. To support his family through financial difficulties, he also took on jobs as a night watchman at a church and as a gravedigger at a nearby cemetery. Since Tammy focused on homemaking and raising their children, the family struggled to make ends meet. Chad then decided to use his journalism education to write a religious-themed book. He published his first work in 1999, which was a collection of religious stories and fantasy elements. To his surprise, the book became quite popular and earned him a big income. As a result, Chad quit his jobs at the cemetery and the newspaper to pursue writing full-time. About a year and a half later, he released another book titled 1 Foot in the Grave. This book was a science work in which he shared his experiences as a gravedigger and explored themes of death, the afterlife, and soul reincarnation. In 2004, Chad established his own publishing company, Spring Creek, to self-publish his writings. His works focused on views about the approaching end of the world and Judgment Day. Over time, some people noted that Chad's religious beliefs seemed to grow more intense. He published numerous fiction and popular science books that included religious themes. Additionally, he began hosting podcasts and creating audio and video sermons to help people prepare for the second coming of Christ. Chad referred to himself as an apocalyptic writer and claimed to have visions of the future, hear voices from the deceased, and receive unique prophecies. Lori Vallow was born on June 26, 1973, in Loma Linda, California. Growing up in a large family, she had 2 older brothers and 3 sisters. Her parents, Denise and Barry Cox, worked hard to support their children. From a young age, Lori was especially close to her older brother Alex, who was protective of her. During her school years, Lori was recognized as a true beauty and had many admirers. She was a charismatic blonde with a slender figure and an engaging smile, enjoying the spotlight and embodying a spirited, adventurous personality. In the spring of 1992, 18-years-old Lori married Nelson Yanes, with whom she had started dating during her senior year. However, they soon realized they had rushed into marriage and were unprepared for family life, resulting in their divorce less than a year later. They did not have any children together. In the fall of 1995, Lori remarried, this time to William Leah. A year later, they welcomed a son named Colby, but their marriage ended in 1998, just 2 years after his birth. In early 2001, Lori married Joseph Anthony Ryan, who adopted her son from her previous marriage, Colby. A year later, they had a daughter named Tylee, but their marriage ended in 2005. After the divorce, an incident occurred when Joseph came to visit the children. Lori's brother, Alex, attacked him, stating in court that he was protecting his sister's honor because Joseph had insulted her. Consequently, Alex was fined and received a short prison sentence. Lori married Charles shortly after divorcing her third husband, Joseph. They got married in February 2006, and Charles is 17 years older than Lori. Despite the age difference, it did not affect their relationship. Charles had been married before and had 2 teenage sons, Zachary and Nicholas, from those relationships. Lori and Charles lived in Nevada with Lori's children from her previous marriages, while Charles's sons would visit on holidays and weekends. Charles owned a small business that provided a stable income for his family. Lori, who had not pursued further education, did not work, but Charles never criticized her for it. In 2014, the couple officially adopted a young boy named Joshua Jackson, also known as JJ Vallow, who was Charles's grandnephew. JJ had autism and needed expensive therapy, which his relatives could afford. Towards the end of 2014, the family Charles decided to move to the Hawaiian Islands, specifically to Kauai. At that time, Zachary, Nicholas, and Colby were already adults living on their own, so the Charles family moved as a group of 4, Lori, Charles, Tylee, and JJ. The family Charles moved to a well-known tourist destination and decided to open a beach bar that focused on fresh juices, smoothies, refreshing drinks, and non-alcoholic cocktails. Despite their hard work and Charles's background in business, but the bar quickly failed due to strong competition. During this period, Lori an interest in religious literature, particularly a book series called Standing in Holy Places by Chad Daybell. She became so fascinated by the writer's Chad ideas that she became almost obsessed, buying all his books and reading them every day. In 2016, the family Charles had to leave Hawaii and move back to the mainland, settling in Arizona. While Charles worked diligently to support the family, his wife, Lori, became more engrossed in her religious beliefs, becoming disconnected from reality. In October 2018, Lori and her close friend Melanie went to an event titled Preparing People for the Second Coming of Christ, which was hosted by Chad in a nearby town. Excited to meet Chad, whom she admired greatly, Lori sat in the front row, completely focused on him, and Chad also noticed her attractive appearance. After the event, the writer Chad and religious speaker decided to personally exchange with his readers, while Lori, as expected, remained behind. She listened intently and asked if she could touch his hand. After she did, Chad looked into her eyes and revealed that they had been husband and wife in 7 previous lives. Lori and Chad exchanged contact information and began talking every day. A few weeks later, while Charles, Lori's husband, was away in Nevada for work, she invited Chad to host a gathering at her home. On that day, around 12 people gathered at the Lori house to discuss God, Judgment Day, and the Second Coming. Lori and Chad decided to work together to prepare people for the impending judgment. They started hosting podcasts about this event, delivering sermons, and writing articles. As time went on, Lori became more disconnected from reality in her family, but Charles did not notice this change right away. He believed it was just a temporary obsession that would eventually fade. By the time he recognized the severity of the situation, it was too late. Lori began to speak about dark spirits and zombies, claiming to her family and friends that she had been chosen by God for a special mission. This mission included the task of defeating the spirits of darkness, demons, and all evil. Charles's efforts to help his wife return to reality were unsuccessful, and she increasingly viewed him as a dark force that needed to be eliminated. By the end of 2018, Charles and Lori's marriage was nearing its end. In February 2019, while Charles was away on a week-long business trip, Lori replaced all the locks in their home. When he returned, Charles found himself locked out, noticed that both his car and the family truck were gone, and realized that $35,000 had been withdrawn from his bank account. Charles shouted for his wife and attempted to enter their home. In a chaotic manner, Lori rushed outside, shouting threats and insults. She yelled that his true self was gone and that a demon had taken over his body. Without hesitation, Charles went to the police station to report Lori for stealing from him and blocking his access to their home and children. He was worried that Lori had threatened to harm him, so he requested a protective order to keep Lori away from him. That evening, Charles's statements were documented as part of standard procedure. He mentioned his wife's intense religious beliefs, her expectation of an imminent apocalypse, and the tendency to categorize people into two groups, either light or demonic beings. Although the officers mocked him while asking questions, they still issued a protective order. The following day, Charles filed for divorce and changed the beneficiary of his $1 million life insurance policy from Lori to his mother and sister. Charles's lawyer explained that he was worried about the well-being of JJ, who needed special care. He believed that his mother and sister would responsibly manage the insurance money and care for JJ if anything happened to him. A few months later, Charles made the critical error of rescind the restraining order against Lori. Charles wanted to reconcile with Lori and save their marriage. So he started visiting her home. He missed the children and hoped for the family to come back together. On July 11, 2019, when he arrived to see his children, he was shot twice in the chest and died. Lori's brother, Alex, called emergency services to report the shooting and admitted to pulling the trigger. He claimed he acted in self-defense, stating that Charles attacked him first with a baseball bat. In response, he pulled out a pistol and fired 2 shots at Charles. The incident was witnessed by the homeowner and the children, and their accounts of what happened were mostly similar. The court determined that the incident was an accidental killing that occurred in self-defense. Although Charles had the potential to cause serious harm with a bat due to his history as a former baseball player, Alex's head injury was minor. On the same day Charles's body was taken to the morgue, Lori hosted a party at their home, complete with music, many guests, and a disco by the pool, right where her husband had been shot and where blood was still visible. She did not organize a funeral or inform anyone about what happened. A week after Charles died, his son, mother, sister and other family members discovered the incident when they learned that his body had not yet been claimed at the morgue. After Charles's death, a series of mysterious disappearances and deaths occurred. Lori sold their home in Arizona and moved with her children to Rexburg, Idaho, near Chad and Tammy, who lived in the area. Lori's brother, Alex, also moved in with them to the same housing complex. Lori's 16-year-old daughter, Tylee, did not attend school and was rarely seen outside. This led many neighbors to be unaware of Tylee's existence. At the same time, Lori described her daughter as a dark entity during a phone call with a friend. On September 8, 2019, Tylee, Lori, and Alex visited Yellowstone Park, where were joined by Chad. Although several photographs from this trip feature Tylee, she was never seen alive again after that day. On September 24th, Lori withdrew JJ's records from school, stating he would be homeschooled. Following this, JJ, 7-year-old boy, was also not seen again. Less than a month later, on October 19th, Chad's 49-year-old wife Tammy died unexpectedly. Chad claimed she had a cold and cough. She likely passed away from respiratory failure during her sleep, showing no signs of foul play. Her death was classified as natural. Interestingly, Chad refused to allow an autopsy to confirm the cause of death, a choice that raised no suspicions. After Tammy unexpectedly passed away, Chad received nearly $500,000 from her insurance policy. 2 weeks later, Chad and Lori went to Hawaii and got married in a ceremony by the beach. This surprised Chad's children, people who are still grieving the loss of their mothers and found it hard to understand their father's decision. When they returned to Arizona, Chad and Lori lived together and misled others by stating that Lori's children were staying with relatives or claiming she had no children at all. They also rented a small storage unit nearby and moved all the children's belongings there, as if they had never existed in their home. On December 12, 2019, Alex passed away unexpectedly at home. Although it seemed he died from a heart attack, so his death was classified as natural. As time went on, many people began to ask Lori about her children's whereabouts. While she was able to deceive neighbors and friends, it was more challenging to maintain her lies in front of family members. Colby, Lori's eldest son, had limited contact with his mother after he moved away. He made a real effort to contact his younger sister, Tylee. At first, Lori answered the calls using her daughter's phone, pretending to be Tylee. However, Colby quickly realized that something was wrong. Meanwhile, Charles's family wanted to see JJ. They requested to take him for holidays or weekends, or just wanted to chat with him on the phone, but Lori always refused or came up with strange excuses. Eventually, JJ's grandmother reported him missing to the police. Shortly after, Colby also went to the police to help find his younger sister, Tylee. When police officers visited Lori's home and requested to speak with her children, she falsely claimed they were with relatives. This turned out to be untrue, so the police returned to her house. They gave Lori a week to bring the children to the station, but instead, she and Chad escaped to Hawaii. On February 20th, 2020, Lori was arrested on Kauai and brought back to Arizona. A search of her and Chad's home was conducted, but there were no signs of the children or evidence that they had ever been there. Chad, her husband, who had been defending her by claiming she had no children, soon became a suspect himself. On June 9th, police found human remains buried in their backyard. Forensic analysis confirmed that the remains belonged to Tylee and her younger brother, JJ. Chad was quickly arrested for hiding evidence and being an accomplice. Authorities then chose to exhume the bodies of Tammy and Alex to determine how they died. In both cases, they discovered traces of chemicals that could cause heart failure, indicating that these individuals did not die of natural causes. The trial of Lori and Chad began in January 2021. They were charged with conspiring to commit serious crimes, committing fraud through grand theft, and engaging in insurance fraud. Additionally, the circumstances surrounding Charles's death were changed from self-defense to premeditated murder. During the trial, witnesses testified that Lori described her children as dark entities and claimed she could save their souls. There were concerns that the deaths of 16-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ may have involved ritualistic practices. Notably, Tylee's body was found partially burned, and weeks before that, Chad sent Lori a people review email in which he rated Tylee as a level 2 dark soul. Due to the serious charges against Lori and Chad, there was a possibility of capital punishment. However, in May 2021, Lori's defense team successfully argued that she was incompetent, which paused the trial. Meanwhile, all 5 of Chad's adult children maintained their father's innocence, stating that he was framed by Lori and Alex. In 2022, after receiving treatment in a psychiatric facility, Lori was found competent to stand trial and face her charges. In March 2023, the judge decided that Lori Vallow would not receive the death penalty, a ruling that the prosecution is currently trying to appeal. Later, in July 2023, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Meanwhile, on May 30th, 2023, Chad Daybell was convicted of first-degree murder of his first wife, Tammy, and Lori's two children, Joshua, J.J. Vallow and Tylee, as well as conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. Chad Daybell then was sentenced to death on June 1st, 2024. The case of Rachel Anderson. Rachel Anderson is a 24-year-old female born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio, to William Bill Anderson and Patricia Trish Anderson. She has a younger brother named John, who was favored by the family. Rachel graduated from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she was a member of the National Honor Society and played on the soccer and volleyball teams. From a young age, Rachel aspired to become a funeral director, a unique career choice. She moved on to Youngstown State University, focusing on the study of deceased individuals. Her dedication to her studies earned her recognition as one of the top students, along with a scholarship. Following this, she attended the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, graduating in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Mortuary Science. After joining the Ohio Funeral Directors Association, Rachel relocated to Columbus to start her internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home. She took her role seriously, believing it was her responsibility to help the families of the deceased. As her internship was nearing its conclusion, Rachel hoped to become a permanent employee at the funeral home. However, her dream was suddenly and tragically shattered. Rachel's body was taken to the morgue, and investigators began interviewing the first witnesses. The autopsy on Rachel revealed the details of the brutal assault she suffered that night. She had been both strangled and stabbed. Specifically, she had a cut on her scalp and fractures at the base of her skull. The stab wound entered through the back of her neck and penetrated the left side of her brain, indicating extreme force that caused a portion of her skull to break off. The autopsy also found that she had been strangled with a cord from an electric blanket. The strangulation caused bleeding in her sternoclavicular muscles and eyelids, and the blood vessels in her eyes had burst, leading to noticeable redness. Forensic evidence revealed bruises and red marks on her ankles and wrists, indicating she was alive when the perpetrator tied her up. A DNA sample was discovered on the rope and Rachel's body. The coroner who conducted Rachel's autopsy determined that her death resulted from a stab wound to the head and neck, despite the initial theory suggesting strangulation. After interviewing various employees from Rachel's workplace and her ex-boyfriend, who had an alibi, the police continued to explore different possibilities regarding the attack. Detectives returned to Rachel's apartment to search for evidence or clues about the perpetrator. On the living room floor, they discovered Rachel's purse, which was missing her wallet. 2 weeks after the crime, Rachel's mother found the 9-inch steak knife used to stab her in a box in her apartment. However, the brutal nature of Rachel's torture suggests that the perpetrator was not simply a thief, but a psychopath who enjoyed abusing his power over his victims. Investigators explored various motives, but initially had no suspects. The details of Rachel's death were kept confidential to protect the investigation. Eventually, DNA samples were collected from different parts of Rachel's body and the crime scene. Unfortunately, these samples did not match any samples in the Special Services database. The video footage from street surveillance cameras captured 2 individuals using Rachel's car to drive around the city after her death. During this period, cash was withdrawn from her debit and credit cards. Location data identified a phone number that was in Rachel's apartment between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m. on January 28, 2018. Analyzing the evidence revealed the caller's whereabouts at various times. Once the account associated with the phone number was identified, investigators found the suspect, 54 years old Anthony Pardon. He had a criminal history that included multiple rapes, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Overall, he served 33 years in prison for his crimes. Anthony had a difficult upbringing. He was initially raised by his grandparents and later moved in with his mother. As a child, he was diagnosed with conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder. In March 1979, at the age of 14, Anthony was briefly committed to the Ohio Youth Commission. By July of the same year, he was placed under court custody and transferred to Franklin County Children's Services. In December, he was again found guilty of making threats, leading to another transfer to the Ohio Youth Commission, where he was placed in foster care. In 1980, Anthony was charged with abuse, involving his foster parents' 15-year-old son. Then, he informed Columbus police that he committed the crime because he was upset after an argument with his girlfriend. As a result, Anthony was convicted as a juvenile. On November 13, 1981, when Anthony was 16, he visited his girlfriend's 39-year-old mother to use the telephone. During this visit, he threatened her with a butcher knife, assaulted her, and stole $100 from her purse. He tied her hands and feet, gagged her, and placed her in the trunk of his car. He drove to Valleydale, where he untied her feet and threw her into the river behind the Valleydale Ballroom. When he noticed that the partially clothed she was able to stay afloat, he entered the creek and held her head underwater. Fortunately, a passerby intervened and scared him away, allowing she to survive. Anthony fled the scene before the police arrived and used the money he had stolen from her to buy tennis shoes and jogging clothes. In May 1982, at the age of 17, he had been convicted of other crimes in Franklin and received a prison sentence ranging from 5 to 25 years. While incarcerated, he committed several rule violations, such as possessing a weapon, setting a mattress on fire, and engaging in fights. He ultimately spent more than 24 years in prison for his offenses and was released in November 2006. After his release, Anthony relocated to Georgia and applied for a job using a different name. In 2007, Anthony was charged with forgery papers and convicted in Floyd County, within a 9-year prison sentence. After serving his time, he received 20 years of probation and were required to wear a GPS ankle monitor. He was released from prison in 2017 and returned to Ohio in June of that year. According to an interstate agreement between Ohio and Georgia, he was supervised by the Adult Parole Authority and had to report to the Sheriff's Department every 90 days. The Ohio Adult Parole Authority did not give him a monitor, as the judge had requested. And Anthony was free once more. On August 21, 2017, he was found with a sex worker in his car, and 6 days later, he was caught driving without a license. During that traffic stop, police discovered he had a kitchen knife and a shotgun, but for some unknown reason, or due to police negligence, he was not arrested. Therefore, he is still continuing to commit crimes. CCTV footage captured Rachel's car parked outside a store. A man exited the passenger side of the car and entered the store. The driver was not visible in the footage. This makes the investigation more difficult than ever. However, after visiting the store and speaking with the employees, the police were able to identify the man. He was named Slits. A few days later, Slits was questioned at the police station. He said an adult man passing by approached him and offered to exchange his ex-girlfriend's card for cash. He agreed to this arrangement, which made him a co-conspirator in the Rachel case. Slits confirmed the identity of Anthony and detailed the entire route they took on the evening of January 28, 2018, while trying to cash in Rachel's stolen cards. The issue at hand was to locate and arrest Anthony. On February 9, 2018, after several days of track at Anthony's sister's house, he was successfully apprehended. The 54 years old, who had a history of crime, faced 9 charges, including burglary, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, rape, and aggravated murder. The trial commenced on February 4, 2020. On the first day of the trial, 4 witnesses provided their testimonies. Among them was Jonathan, a co-worker of Rachel, who found her body. He, along with the manager of Rachel's apartment complex, shared their accounts. The jury also heard testimony from Officer Frank Scani, who was parked outside the apartment when Jonathan discovered the body Rachel's and reviewed the surveillance footage. On February 5th, Rachel's brother, John, and Special Agent Joshua Durst took the stand. Lead Detective Art Hughes testified the following day, on February 6th. On that same day, Anthony expressed dissatisfaction with his attorneys to the judge and requested new representation. He appeared to be deliberately delaying the proceedings. On Monday, February 10th, the prosecutors called a fingerprint expert and other specialists to explain how technology helped determine where Rachel's debit card was used and at the crime scene. Anthony's sister testified that he gave her Rachel's debit card, claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. She later discovered, through news reports, that the card actually belonged to the crime victim, Rachel. The final day of testimony was Tuesday, February 11th. The medical examiner reported finding Anthony's DNA at the scene, while a forensic pathologist and a deputy coroner from the Franklin County office detailed Rachel's injuries. In the courtroom, the final moments of Rachel's life were carefully reconstructed. She celebrated her 24th birthday on January 26th and 27th, 2018. Her brother, John, traveled from Warren to Columbus to visit her. The following day, she and John went to the home of her friend and colleague, Jonathan, where they held a birthday party for she. After a long night of celebration, Rachel and her brother stayed overnight at their friend's house. The next morning, Rachel left for work, leaving her apartment key with her brother. On the 28th, John returned to his hometown and accidentally brought Rachel's house key with her. At around 1 p.m., Rachel texted John, person holding her house keys, to let him know she would come over to pick it up. Rachel talked to her mother around 6:30 p.m. and then went to John's place to get her key. Since her apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, she had to leave it open. After stopping for dinner at her favorite restaurant, Rachel arrived back at her apartment around 7:30 p.m. She then left the apartment, and Anthony was waiting for her outside. He kidnapped Rachel, taking her from the ground floor to the top floor. He used force to pin her down, then tying her legs with a hair dryer cord and her hands with a belt and curtain cord. Once she was unable to move, he wrapped a curling iron cord around her wrists to silence her and gagged her. He forced Rachel to provide him with the PIN numbers for her cards. He tortured her and exploited her vulnerability. Ultimately, he strangled her with a cord from an electric blanket. In addition to strangulation, he also caused blunt force trauma and inflicted a stab wound to her head. Afterward, he concealed her body in a closet, leaving her naked from the waist down with the electric blanket cord around her neck and the door handle. Anthony stole her car and used her bank cards at various stores in Columbus to make quick money. The defense did not present any witnesses. The final hearing took place on February 12th. Assistant Prosecutor Amy Van Kullen gave the state's argument, outlining the timeline of the crime and telling the jury that Anthony murdered Rachel in cold blood. In his argument, the defense attorney, Larry Thomas, admitted that Anthony used Rachel's cards but said that he was not responsible for the murder. Attorney Larry argued that the state's case was based on mere speculation. He said that DNA evidence and cell phone data were not enough to prove Anthony's involvement in the crime. The jury, consisting of 4 men and 8 women, spent about 6 hours over 2 days discussing the case, before finding him guilty on all charges. The prosecution sought the death penalty because he killed Rachel during a burglary and he had previously been convicted of the attempted murder of a similar woman. They opted for the death penalty instead of seeking clemency because of his extensive criminal history. Prosecutor O.B. Bryan remarked that some individuals cannot follow the law, and Anthony is one of them. The sentencing phase of the trial started on February 18th. The defense aimed to lessen the severity of the punishment by highlighting Anthony's difficult childhood, but this argument was not effective. Prosecutors contended that the negative factors in the case were more significant than any positive ones. Additionally, it was established during the trial that Anthony understood his actions when he assaulted Rachel. Testimonies in Anthony's defense were given by his mother, sister, a psychologist, and his former elementary school teacher. On February 19th, Anthony gave a 13-minute speech before the jury, sharing details about his abusive childhood. He shared the struggles he encountered after his release from prison, expressing feelings of hardship and despair. He claimed that the law system let him down and that he received no support. And he attributed his current situation to the failures of the justice system. However, he neither addressed the crime he committed nor offered any apology in his remarks. On February 20th, after 3.5 hours of deliberation, the jury was unable to reach a consensus on whether to recommend the death penalty. Instead, they decided to recommend life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentencing occurred on March 16, 2020. Rachel's mother cried in court when the verdict was announced. Her father issued a sharing his thoughts on the investigation he had witnessed over the past few years. He was shocked to look a dangerous repeat offender making outrageous demands and acting as if he was entitled to something. He also was astonished to see an adult complaining about the system's shortcomings while trying to evade responsibility. Judge McIntosh sentenced Anthony Pardon to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole, one for aggravated murder and another for violence. Furthermore, he received an additional 63 years for aggravated burglary, kidnapping, aggravated robbery, and several violent offenses. These sentences are to be served one after the other. Rachel's 24th birthday turned into a tragic day. A young woman with a bright future ahead of her had her life unexpectedly cut short. She was finishing up her internship and was on the verge of receiving a promising job offer. Rachel was laid to rest at Pine View Memorial Park, leaving her family and friends struggling to cope with the sudden loss. Every year on January 28th, Rachel's family and friends light a candle at home to remember her. Rachel was a lively person with a beautiful smile and a loving heart. She was kind and always willing to help her friends. Throughout her life, she had many interests, but her main focus was her career. Rachel was naturally compassionate, loved dancing, and cherished time spent with family and friends. She had a special love for children and valued her life, which was sadly taken away too soon. The case of Antonia Barra. Antonia Barra was born in the late 1980s into a warm and united family. Her family lived in a spacious home that comfortably accommodated. Her parents, Alejandro and Marcela, nurtured their 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son, creating a warm environment filled with care and attention. The children were generally kind and well-behaved, rarely causing trouble. However, Antonia distinguished herself from her siblings with her exceptional perceptiveness, sense of responsibility, and ambition from an early age, making her a special source of pride for her parents. Antonia was a top student who had a good relationship with her teachers and clear future goals. She dreamed of traveling and leading a fulfilling life. After graduating high school, she was accepted into her preferred university and began studying a popular major. As a freshman, she focused on mastering the fundamentals of her future career, while also engaging in social and academic events, where she made new friends who shared her interests and ambitions. One of her closest friends was Consuela Uribe, a law student. They enjoyed spending time together, going out, shopping, and attending parties. This brings them even close. Martin was born and raised in Tomoko, Chile, the same city as Antonia. He comes from a large family, including parents, a sister, and a brother. When he was young, he had a child with a woman named Daniela Alvarez, but their relationship ended shortly right after they give birth. From 2015 to 2017, Antonia and Martin communicated through a social network. At that time, Antonia was a teenager. They exchanged messages and commented on each other's photos, but their interactions were limited to online communication. Eventually, they met in person, which sadly resulted in a tragic outcome. When Antonia broke up with her boyfriend Rodrigo, Consuela suggested that she find a way to distract herself from the sadness. Struggling with the breakup, Antonia decided to take her friend's advice to help clear her mind and forget her troubles for a while. They planned a trip to celebrate Chile's Independence Day on September 18th, choosing the tourist town of Pucón as their destination. By chance, Antonia encountered Martin there. He was in Pucón to attend an electronic music festival at a local club called Black Room, where a DJ friend of his was performing. On September 17th, around 6:30 p.m., Consuela, Antonia, and 3 friends, including Consuela's boyfriend, headed to Pucón. The trip went well, and upon arrival, they stayed in different accommodations. The girls stayed at a summer house owned by the Consuela family. After 8 p.m., they started getting ready for a party at the popular venue, Black Room, which promised to be an unforgettable experience. Before leaving, Antonia messaged her father, Alejandro, who reminded her to be careful and cautious with strangers. She replied, assuring him that being prudent was her top priority. Antonia and Consuela got ready and went to the club, where they ordered food and drinks. Antonia and Martin had a great time chatting and dancing. The Black Room Club turned out to be the perfect place for their unexpected reunion. They were delighted by this chance meeting and spent the evening together, enjoying each other's company. It was clear they had a mutual affection. Antonia would occasionally join Consuela and greet the male acquaintances she had traveled with, moving between different bars. However, she didn't realize how much she had consumed. The combination of the long drive and an empty stomach contributed to her inebriation, which was unusual for her. Around 6:45 a.m., Consuela found her friend Antonia happily chatting with a mutual acquaintance, Emilio. Consuela suggested it was time to leave, but Antonia insisted on staying, feeling good and wanting to enjoy the night longer. Despite Consuela's advice to stop drinking and rethink her choice, Antonia remained determined to stay at the club while Consuela went home. This decision would later prove to be a mistake for Antonia. Emilio, who was there, became a witness to what happened next and provided details during the investigation and in court. He observed that Martin approached Antonia, started a conversation, and then took her by the hand to lead her toward the exit. Emilio noticed that Antonia was acting strangely. He wasn't sure if Antonia was participating in the conversation or simply confused by the alcohol. However, she didn't seem to mind being taken away, or maybe she didn't even realize it was happening. Emilio believed that Martin had asked her to join him and that she had agreed. However, the external surveillance footage revealed a different version of events. Martin's friends reported that they left the club in 2 cars, but there wasn't enough space for Martin and Antonia in either vehicle, so they decided to walk. As they walked, they encountered a store. Surveillance footage showed that Martin forced Antonia to go inside. She was unsteady and unable to fight back. Martin, who was a bit more sober, managed to exert some control over the situation. They were recorded on camera multiple times throughout the night. During their time together, Martin was overly affectionate and attempted to kiss Antonia, but she did not reciprocate and tried to stay away. Once they arrived at the rented house, the other friends paid little attention to she. Only Barbara, a 19 years old who had just joined and wasn't drinking, noticed that the couple appeared to be drunk. Later, they went upstairs. Around 9 a.m., Consuela received a voice message from Antonia. At first, she found it difficult to understand the message. After listening closely, she deciphered that Antonia was asking to be picked up. Since Antonia couldn't share her exact location, Consuela used GPS to locate her. Consuela and her boyfriend, Jose, then headed to the specified location. When Consuela and Jose entered the house, they found Martin naked and using a pillow to cover himself. Consuela asked him where Antonia was, but he said he didn't know. They then went upstairs and discovered Antonia in a bedroom, lying on the bed in her underwear and quietly crying. Jose picked her up and took her to the car. Consuela asked what had happened, but Antonia could only cry sob. Consuela and Jose tried to comfort her by hugging her and encouraging her to talk. Once they arrived back at the summer house, Antonia opened up about everything. She revealed that Martin had taken advantage of her against her will, leaving her feeling helpless. Though her memories were blurry, she clearly understood that he had harmed her. This incident had taken place when they went upstairs, and afterward, he left her alone and vanished. After hearing about the incident, Jose and Consuela urged Antonia to report Martin to the police and seek justice. However, she was too afraid that her parents and the public would find out, so she decided to silently cope with her trauma and heal on her own. She asked them not to tell anyone about what happened. Then, Antonia received a message from her father checking in on her and joking about whether she had been drinking too much. To avoid raising suspicion, Consuela responded casually, which unintentionally revealed her true feelings. The next day, Antonia met with Martin to discuss what had happened, but he was dismissive and arrogant, insisting that the previous night's incidents were consensual. At that moment, Antonia understood that she would not receive the truth or an apology from him, and she knew she had to try to get through it. Antonia was suffering from intimacy trauma syndrome, which affects her physical, emotional, cognitive, and social behaviors. This condition can manifest right after a traumatic incident or even months or years later. Antonia was going through an intense phase of this syndrome alone, unable to escape feelings of distress, distraction, anxiety, and confusion, often alternating with hysterical outbursts and crying. Antonia experienced a strong desire to cleanse herself, which caused her nausea and occasional vomiting. For 3 weeks, she kept to herself and tried to behave as if everything was normal. A childhood friend remarked that they hadn't noticed anything unusual about her, but her classmates were aware of her memory loss and disorganization linked to the syndrome. One classmate noted that her grades had fallen, which was unexpected for someone who had always been a dedicated student. When asked about the cause, Antonia said that it to her poor health. Her terrible secret somehow got revealed to an ex-boyfriend, Rodrigo, but the details he received were distorted and negative. He quickly reported this to others. Antonia insisted she was not responsible for what had happened, claiming the information he had was greatly exaggerated, but he did not believe her. To make matters worse, the day before incidents, Martin had called her, and it's unclear what they discussed, though it might have included threats from him. On the evening of October 13, 2019, Antonia family could never have imagined how the day would end. Carla, visiting their parents' home, went upstairs to greet her sister Antonia, expecting a simple conversation. However, when she found Antonia seemingly asleep, Carla decided not to disturb her and moved toward the door. Just before leaving, she heard Antonia ask about their mother and request the light to be turned off. After telling Carla she loved her, Antonia turned her face away. Carla thought, maybe Antonia just tired or not in the mood. But she didn't know that Antonia was suffering from painful thoughts, making her feel that there was only one way to escape her suffering. By 7 p.m. that evening, Antonia's mother, Marcela, noticed there was no response coming from Antonia's room. When Marcella went in, she was met with a horrifying sight. Her daughter was hanging motionless above the floor. Marcella rushed to Antonia but found no signs of life. Stunned by the tragedy, she called for help from neighbors. Family friends assisted in taking down the body and contacted emergency services. Soon after, Antonia's father, Alejandro, spoke to the media, promising to discover the reasons behind his daughter's tragic choice and to pursue justice. Antonia was known for her lively personality and intelligence, indicating that something significant had deeply affected her. The autopsy later confirmed that she had died from self-strangulation. The situation required urgent action. Without waiting for official investigations, Antonia's parents took matters into their own hands and started their own inquiry. They hired private detectives who carefully reconstructed the last days of Antonia's life and discovered the person responsible for her distress. Alejandro and Marcella quickly reported Martin Pradenas to the police, suspecting him of being the culprit. Law enforcement officials interviewed Martin multiple times, but he maintained that he did nothing wrong concerning Antonia. He asserted that their relationship was consensual and he denied any involvement in her tragic death. However, detectives had a different viewpoint and gathered evidence that contradicted his statements. The investigation revealed that Martin left Pucón on September 17th around noon with friends, and they intended to return the following day. Once they arrived at their destination, the group hosted a party at a rented house, filled with conversation, laughter, and, of course, alcohol. A few hours before Antonia passed away, she sent a goodbye message to Rodrigo and shared a childhood video in a family chat. In the video, Antonia was dancing and laughing happily, which highlighted how much she longed for her younger self. She realized she could never go back to her previous life. This tragedy has deeply affected everyone. Thanks to Alejandro, who found the courage to share his daughter's story on a national level, Antonia's tragedy began to resonate with the public. Her name appeared on posters, social media hashtags, and even on building walls. Public support has had a big impact. Within a week, several women came forward with similar allegations against Martin. 6 new charges were filed against him, detailing actions he took from 2010 to 2019. Ultimately, Martin was arrested for these crimes. Meanwhile, his family sought to protect their personal information, which had been leaked online. They claimed that their constitutional right to privacy was violated due to numerous insults, aggressive messages, and false information circulating online. The Martin family suspected the Antonia family of being involved in these leaks. On June 12, 2020, the Tomoko court granted the Martin family's request, according to which the Antonia family is not allowed to share any information about the Martin family on social media and to refrain from making damaging posts. The ruling has angered Chileans who feel it unfairly protected Martin. On July 21st, the Antonia family appealed the decision to the Supreme Court, but their appeal was denied. Later that month, the lawyer for Martin filed a request for protective measures for his client. During the same period, he was formally charged with multiple attacks. Public anger in Chile intensified, leading to the investigation being referred to as the Antonia case. This case has come to represent the fight for justice for victims of violence. Many women, having stayed silent for years, started to share their own experiences. On July 22nd, the court decided to change Martin's preventive measure. He was transferred from detention to house arrest, that is, released from custody. The judge clarified that this decision did not reflect the final punishment. Although the prosecutor charged Martin with 5 counts of misconduct, the court only recognized 2 of them. This decision sparked massive protests across the country, with thousands of people taking to the streets in outrage over the halt of investigations into certain matters and the decision to place Martin under house arrest. In response to public outcry, the authorities filed a request with the appeals court. The judiciary acted quickly, revoking the house arrest and rearresting Martin. Later, the same court removed the statute of limitations for 2 cases of intimate violence. Meanwhile, Alejandro, along with feminist organizations, was working on a bill to establish penalties for such crimes. He stressed that everyone should be concerned when a woman is taken away by a man without resistance, particularly if she is intoxicated. He highlighted the necessity of taking action in these situations, as this vulnerability puts women at risk of becoming victims. The investigation progressed, and in February 2021, Martin's phone was found. Forensic analysis revealed that it contained photos of women's underwear, indicating that he took pride in his actions and kept records of them. The police report was extensive, totaling nearly 400 pages, and included statements from victims, witnesses, and people who knew both Martin and Antonia, including childhood acquaintances. Martin's former teacher described him as a bright and cheerful child, although he showed a strong interest in intimate subjects. Some women recalled that he had touched them when they were young, but at the time, no one considered it significant since they were all children. On June 14, 2022, the criminal court in Tomoko began hearings that were expected to last over a month. During this time, the prosecution presented evidence, expert testimonies, and witness statements. Video footage clearly showed that Antonia could not control the situation. On August 26, Martin was sentenced to 20 years in prison for crimes related to intimacy and aggressive behavior. However, on December 29, the Supreme Court accepted the defense's appeal, disagreeing with the original verdict, and a new trial was set for spring 2023. On March 16, the defendant's legal team withdrew from case, and public defense took over his case. On April 24, 2024, his second trial began, addressing 5 cases of violence and 2 cases of sexual assault. During the trial, Martin chose to speak and described what happened. He attributed his actions to the severe effects of alcohol. However, prosecutors argued that his drinking with the women made them vulnerable. On July 7, 2023, he was found guilty. The federal prosecution requested a 41-year prison sentence for Martin Pradines. On July 28, 2023, the 31-year-old was sentenced to 17 years in prison for 7 offenses related to sexual intimacy involving 6 victims. After accounting for the time he had already spent in custody, he would serve 14 years. The tragic case of Antonia highlighted the danger posed by Martin. It remains unclear how many other innocent women may have been affected by his actions. The line between harassment and flirting is very thin, and one can never anticipate when someone might cross that dangerous boundary. The case of Lizzie Marriott. Lizzie Marriott, a 19-year-old college student, went missing on October 9, 2012, after attending her classes. Before leaving, she left a note for her aunt and uncle, Tony and Becky Hanna, with whom she was staying. In the note, Lizzie said she was visiting a friend and would return before midnight. However, she did not return that night or the next day. Her car was later found in the school parking lot, but she was nowhere to be found. The investigation into her disappearance eventually turned to the search for her body. Police discovered that a group of people were involved in her death. Lizzie became a favorite member of Tony and Becky's family, moving in with them to save on housing costs while she attended the University of New Hampshire. She has always had a passion for marine animals, which inspired her to pursue a career in marine biology. In the fall of 2012, Lizzie moved away from her parents, Bob and Melissa Marriott, in Massachusetts to start a new life in Chester. Despite the 2-hour drive, they remained close and kept in touch. Lizzie's gentle, kind, and sweet nature made her a lovable person, and her presence brought joy to those around her. Tony and Becky remember her warm greeting, "I'm home," which filled their hearts with love and happiness whenever she returned to their home. As Lizzie settled into her new life, she worked at Target in her spare time, where she quickly adapted and built a good reputation. Lizzie met 18-year-old Kate McDonald, and the two quickly became friends, often hanging out after work. One evening, Kate invites Lizzie to her apartment for dinner and a movie. Lizzie agrees, however, their plans for a quiet evening are disrupted when Kate's 30-year-old boyfriend, Seth Mazzaglia, joins them. Lizzie doesn't mind Seth's surprise appearance, thinking it would be more fun to have a friend. Moreover, her new acquaintances are interesting people related to the theater. And Seth graduated from the same university as Lizzie but majored in theater arts. With many of the same interests, the evening looks like it will be a lot of fun. However, Lizzie doesn't know that her decision to enter the apartment that night will be a fateful one, as she will never leave again. Lizzie's relatives wait until the next evening, thinking that she may have stayed overnight with a friend before going to college. However, when she did not appear on October 10th, her aunt and uncle became worried and contacted her parents. But her parents had no information about her whereabouts. After receiving the news, Lizzie's mother and father immediately drove to Chester, reporting her missing to the police along the way. The search for Lizzie involved not only the police and her relatives, but also her friends. To begin the investigation, everyone who knew her was questioned. Although her relatives were unsure of her whereabouts, her friends were able to provide some information. A friend named Nate Mikhael said he knew where she might be and pointed to Kate McDonald. The police took note of this and began to follow up on new leads. Meanwhile, it was discovered that there was no activity on Lizzie's bank account and her phone was turned off. This ruled out the initial possibility that she had been in an accident. The investigation took a significant turn when her car was found just a few days later. At the same time, Bob and Melissa Marriott announced a $10,000 reward for information about their missing daughter. After speaking with Lizzie's friends and acquaintances, the police discovered some surprising details about Lizzie's co-worker, Kate, and her boyfriend Seth Mazzaglia. It was clear that the couple was not what they appeared to be in public. Seth was later arrested. Lizzie and Kate's acquaintances revealed that the two girls had been spending a lot of time together recently, but their personalities and attitudes towards life seemed different. Lizzie was known to be friendly and compassionate, while Kate was often described as reserved and rude. However, employees at the store noticed a change in Kate's behavior after she started dating Seth, suggesting that she had been influenced by his bad traits over time. She had undergone significant changes, losing her previous carefree and bubbly personality. Unbeknownst to them, she had also begun to distance herself from relatives who disapproved of her new boyfriend. The couple began dating when Seth was 17, and after she turned 18, they moved in together at Mel's apartment in Dover, New Hampshire. Police kept a close eye on the couple and conducted background checks but found nothing unusual. While studying the young couple's online profiles, officers discovered details about their personal lives. Seth and Kate had an unusual relationship. On a website, Kate, using the pseudonym Miss Scarlet, a vampire actress, posted an ad. She wrote that she and her partner were looking for a live-in maid. Required duties included cleaning the house, washing dishes, laundry, cooking, and being available for sex at any time. Kate also shared information about herself and her partner, describing their relationship as dominant and submissive, with the former giving orders and controlling while the latter completely submitted to his will. Kate had attached photos of herself in a gothic style to the post. It was clear that their relationship was not based on love and mutual respect, but on humiliation and submission. The couple practiced a form of bondage, discipline, dominance, and submission, with Seth as the dominant partner and Kate as the submissive. This discovery led the police to strongly suspect that they might be involved in Lizzie's disappearance. On October 12th, the police interviewed Kate and Seth. The police separated them to gather information more effectively. For 2 hours, Kate insisted that she had not seen Lizzie on October 9th. Then she refused to talk altogether. Seth, on the other hand, provided more details, confirming that Lizzie had been at their house that day. According to Seth, the evening involved watching movies, playing strip poker, and then having consensual sex with 2 women. During this intimate encounter, Seth claimed that he had tied the women up with rope, but the situation turned tragic, resulting in Lizzie's accidental death. Then, in a state of shock and fear of being misunderstood, he and Kate took the girl's body to Pierce Island and threw it into the Piscataqua River. They then went home. After an 11-hour interrogation, Seth took police to the location where he said he dumped Lizzie's body, reenacting the scene where he threw her off the cliff. He was later charged with murder on October 13th. The news of their daughter's death was devastating to Melissa and Bob Marriott. A candlelight vigil was held in Lizzie's memory that same day. At the vigil, Bob expressed his gratitude to those in attendance and hoped that the collective prayer would bring Lizzie peace. He described his daughter as an angel who had gone to heaven. Her friend Nate, who was actively involved in the search for Lizzie, remembered her as always telling funny stories to lift the spirits or comfort others during difficult times. He sadly wondered if she would ever find the right words to comfort them in her current situation. However, Lizzie's parents refused to accept the circumstances of her death as Seth described. Her parents asked the police to find their daughter's body as soon as possible so they could say goodbye and give her a proper burial. The search for Lizzie continued, with the cooperation of volunteers and police. However, the river where Lizzie's body was dumped was subject to strong currents, and it is likely that she had drifted into the Atlantic Ocean. The investigation expanded to include a thorough search of Seth and Kate's apartment and the surrounding area. Police found that their apartment was unclean and very messy. They also discovered that Seth had an interest in occultism and black magic. Since no evidence was found in the apartment, forensic experts examined the surrounding area, including the trash cans. In one of the bins, they found a bag containing a sweatshirt, black leather gloves, and men's underwear. After an autopsy, underwear was found to contain DNA from both Seth and Lizzie, confirming their intimate relationship. Police also found a sweater that was identified by Lizzie's family as hers. On October 17th, Kate gave her statement after a period of silence. She described a get-together with Lizzie on October 9th. The evening began as a movie night but then turned into a game of strip poker. During the game, they became excited and decided to have sex, with all parties allegedly consenting. According to Kate, the interactions began with affectionate touches and kisses before Seth suggested tying Lizzie up with rope, an idea she agreed to. Kate even reenacted Seth tying Lizzie up with rope. Everything was going well, but suddenly Lizzie had a seizure. She began having difficulty breathing, and a few minutes later, she passed out. When Seth and Kate lifted the girl up, she stopped breathing. It all happened quickly and unexpectedly. Kate claimed that no one was responsible for what happened. It was an accident. However, a crucial testimony later emerged, shedding further light on the case. One day, a young woman came to the police station, claiming that she had important information about the Lizzie Marriott case. She asked to speak to the police officer leading the investigation. During the conversation, the woman introduced herself as Catherine Fish, Seth's ex-girlfriend. As she shared her story, she hinted that Seth was capable of murder. She revealed that, during their relationship, he had once confessed to her that in one of his fantasies, he had taken someone's life. Catherine and Seth met about 10 years ago. Initially, Seth appeared to be a charming and attentive man, showering Catherine with attention, flowers, and gifts. He was charming in conversation, and Catherine quickly fell in love with him. However, things took an unexpected turn during their first intimate encounter, when Catherine discovered that Seth enjoyed physical violence. Although Catherine was initially willing to explore new experiences as long as Seth remained in control, she soon became uncomfortable as Seth's behavior became increasingly cruel and aggressive. Seth would occasionally share his disturbing thoughts and fantasies with Catherine, which only made her increasingly anxious. One particularly unpleasant conversation led Catherine to a terrifying realization: Seth could be a danger to her. This fear was soon confirmed when Seth, in a fit of aggression, grabbed Catherine by the neck, squeezing despite her desperate pleas to let go. Catherine's life became increasingly uncomfortable after her boyfriend, Seth, brought home several different girls, claiming that they needed a third, long-term partner to spice up their relationship. Catherine's life became hell. She admitted that Seth scared her so much that she didn't dare to escape. After a few months, she finally got the courage to run away. Catherine miraculously traveled 1,000 miles to her parents' house, never to see her ex-boyfriend again. In May 2014, Seth appeared in court on charges including attempted murder. Several witnesses testified against him, including Kate McDonald, who was arrested 2 months after Lizzie's death on charges of obstruction of justice and obstruction of justice. While in custody, Kate had plenty of time to reflect on her actions and the person she was protecting. Initially, she and Seth maintained an active correspondence while she was behind bars. The pair shared romantic visions of escaping together and fleeing to a country without extradition laws where they could marry and start a family. However, their escape plan hit a snag. Seth convinced his soon-to-be-released cellmate, Ryan Bachman, to assist in the plan. Ryan was given access to Seth's bank account and instructed to withdraw money, buy drugs with the money, and then sell the drugs to increase his initial capital. The plan was to use the extra money to buy various items, including guns, 2 cars, explosives, and a boat. However, Ryan decided to use the money for his own purposes and the police soon discovered the plan. Seth therefore abandoned his escape plan and sent Kate a letter, suggesting that they would meet in the afterlife, hinting at the possibility that death was not the end of life. Some interpreted this as a suggestion for Kate to end her life. Over time, Kate's thinking became clearer, and when the prosecutor's office offered her a favorable deal in 2014, she accepted without hesitation. The deal required Kate to give a truthful account of the events that occurred on the evening of October 9th in the apartment. In return, her potential 20-year prison sentence was reduced to 3 years. Kate said that after she started a relationship with Seth, she was terrified of him and did everything he told her to do. Over time, Seth took control of her life, suppressed her free will, and made her dependent on him. A month and a half before Lizzie's death, Seth sent her a text message, asking her to find another partner as soon as possible because he didn't want to be alone while she was away on a 10-day theatrical tour. However, Kate was unable to find anyone to replace her. Over time, Seth's messages became more aggressive, shifting from commands to threats. He warned her that if she didn't follow his instructions, she would face serious consequences. At the very least, Seth wanted her to bring a friend to spend time with so he could pursue his plans. To fulfill his request, Kate invites her friend Lizzie, as Lizzie has been to Kate's house before and trusts her. Lizzie is unaware that Seth planned this and is happy that she is the chosen partner, as he has seen her pictures before. To ensure that Lizzie will come without hesitation, Kate does not tell her that they will have Seth join them. Lizzie arrives at Kate's apartment on October 9th at 9 p.m. Initially, Kate and Lizzie socialize while Seth joins in later, creating a lively atmosphere with his jokes and interest in the girls. When they move on to watch a movie, Seth suggests a strip card game, which adds an intimate atmosphere to the scene. The game goes normally, but Lizzie is losing, so she strips in her underwear for another losing game. Seth suggested kissing Lizzie, but the girl refused, explaining that she had a boyfriend and that disgusted her. After a while, Seth asked Lizzie to be alone, and she replied no. In response, Seth angrily left the room, put on a pair of black leather gloves, and grabbed a rope. He then returned, sat down behind Lizzie, and quickly wrapped the rope around her neck. Lizzie was taken by surprise and had no time to react. Seth had strangled her without hesitation. He then desecrated the victim's body. During the whole process, Kate sat nearby, frozen in fear. She was afraid that she would be the next victim, so she did nothing to help poor Lizzie. Around 1 a.m., the couple put Lizzie's body in a suitcase after wrapping it in a tarp and some pollen. They transported the suitcase to Lizzie's car and drove to Pierce Island, which was located by the river. Once on the island, they took the suitcase to an observation deck and took the body out, throwing it over the cliff. After dumping the body, the couple cleaned up in the car, then drove to the school and left Lizzie's car in the parking lot. From there, they walked about 10 miles home. Kate later explained that she was very scared and shocked during the whole process. She later refused to testify against Seth because she was afraid he would hurt her. During the trial, the girl appeared to be in pain, crying continuously, but not shedding a single tear. Because of this, many in the courtroom doubted her sincerity. They believed that she might be a talented actress and that she could easily fake her pain. The defense took note of this and argued that the girl's emotional display was fabricated. Meanwhile, both the defense and the prosecution agreed that the couple disposed of Lizzie's body after she died. However, they disagreed on the circumstances surrounding the death. Seth's defense argued that the victim, Lizzie, died as a result of an accident during an intimate encounter. Kate's defense, on the other hand, claimed that the death was intentional, and asserted that Kate had been under great pressure from Seth, who isolated her from her family and friends and forced her into intimate relationships. This, according to the defense, had a significant impact on her mental state. The prosecution, on the other hand, focused on proving that the crime was an act of intentional homicide. They presented the discovery of the gloves as crucial evidence, which they alleged showed that Seth had tried to cover his tracks. According to the prosecution, Seth was aware of what he had done. The prosecution's witnesses also included Roberta Gherkin and Paul Hickok, acquaintances of the couple. It turned out that at 10:49 p.m., after Lizzie's death, Seth called them. He said he needed help and asked them to come. After 11 p.m., the couple went to Seth's apartment, where they witnessed a disturbing scene, Seth sitting on the bed next to a girl in lingerie. When Paul asked about the situation, Seth repeatedly said, "This time it's gone too far." Roberta discovered Kate curled up on the kitchen floor. Upon witnessing this, the couple urged Seth to call an ambulance and quickly left the scene. They chose not to intervene or contact the police to avoid any further trouble. Seth Mazzaglia, 32, was convicted of first-degree murder by strangulation and conspiracy on August 14, 2014. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. His co-defendant, Kate McDonald, 20, was sentenced to 3 years in prison. After her release in 2016, Kate lived a fairly private life, with many believing she had returned to her parents' home. Tragically, Lizzie Marriott's body was never found. Her parents, Bob and Melissa, created a memorial bench in their hometown to honor their daughter. While they accept that justice has been served in part through Seth's sentencing, they find it difficult to accept the leniency of Kate McDonald's sentence, claiming that their daughter will never return. The case of Klondike Bishimbayev. Klondike Bishimbayev was born on April 11, 1980, in Gildorda, which was part of the Kazakh SSR. In 2000, Klondike began his career as a bank manager. He completed a short internship at the Ministry of Economy, then spent several years in senior roles at major companies before returning to the ministry. In 2016, he became the Minister of Economy, making him one of the youngest high-ranking officials in Kazakhstan. However, just 8 months later, he was dismissed due to a major scandal and was imprisoned for accepting large bribes. He received a 10-year sentence but was released on parole after 1 year. He later apologized to Nursultan Nazarbayev, the then president, who granted him a pardon. Quandik's personal life includes 2 official marriages before he met the future victim. His first marriage was to Agarim Rova in 1999, while he was still a student. They had a son, Alexander Valikin, in 2000, but their marriage ended in 2004. In 2006, while working as an advisor to the Minister of Economy and Budget Planning in Kazakhstan, he married Nazim Karmanbabagaleva. They were married for 14 years and had 3 children together. However, in 2020, Nazim initiated their divorce. Sultanat Nuknova was born on May 15, 1992, in Pavlodar, a city in northern Kazakhstan. As a schoolgirl, Sultanat developed a strong interest in astrology. She thoroughly studied related literature and created horoscopes and natal charts for her friends and classmates. To her surprise, many of her predictions turned out to be quite accurate. Eventually, she decided to turn her hobby into a profession, and success followed quickly. Sultanat promoted her astrological services on social media, offering personal and online consultations. She provided both short-term and long-term forecasts, assisted people in achieving their goals, choosing careers, and finding spiritual growth. Additionally, she offered advice on love, assessed compatibility, and helped individuals navigate their relationships. Sultanat only worked with women and girls. She quickly became financially independent by earning good money from her passion, something she knew well and enjoyed. Her social media following grew significantly, and many people sought her services, leading to consultations being booked months ahead. She was finally living the life she had always dreamed of. In the spring of 2022, Quandik Bishimbayev, who was a dedicated fan, came across Sultanat's page on a popular social media platform. He was captivated by the young beauty and decided to reach out to her by signing up for an astrological consultation. However, she turned him down, explaining that she only offered services to women. This rejection only increased Quandik's interest in her. He persistently sought her attention by showering her with compliments and trying to win her over, insisting that she was the only one who could help him and that he exclusively trusted her expertise. Although Sultanat appreciated his flattery, she was determined to avoid meeting him, finding his behavior distasteful. He repeatedly offered her an online consultation, but she was firm in his refusal. For months, Quandik persistently tried to ask Sultanat out on a date. During this time, he learned almost everything about her, where she lived, who she interacted with, where she went, and what her interests were. Despite this, Sultanat continued to reject his advances but told her friends that she had an ardent admirer. Eventually, Sultanat agreed to meet him. Quandik made every effort to impress her. He was polite and courteous. However, that first meeting was only the beginning. In a candid discussion with her brother, Sultanat expressed that the man was not her type and that a relationship between them was unlikely. Initially, neither Sultanat nor her family was worried about the Quandik's behavior. She believed she could keep him at a distance, and her family and friends trusted that she could make her own choices. However, a month later, the situation began to shift. He found a way to get closer to Sultanat by reaching out to the eldest member of her family. He expressed a desire to speak with her grandmother and seek her blessing. This gesture affected Sultanat, but she still declined to pursue a relationship with him. Unexpectedly, in the fall of 2022, Sultanat visited her parents in Pavlodar and shared that she didn't expect any significant changes in her personal life. She confessed to her brother that she was troubled by the 12-year age gap with Quandik and felt no romantic attraction towards him. Additionally, her astrological calculations indicated they weren't compatible. However, less than a month after that visit, her brother stumbled upon a post on social media where Sultanat announced that Klondike had officially proposed to her and she had happily accepted. This news shocked the entire family, as it was completely unexpected. Even her friends were taken aback, as she had recently told them that Klondike was not the right match for her and she believed nothing serious would come of it. In December 2022, just a few months after they met, they held an extravagant wedding, featuring an expensive banquet at one of the most popular venues in Astana. It's important to note that their marriage was not officially registered. They only participated in a special marriage ceremony at a mosque and did not register their union with the authorities, so they were considered civil partners. During this time, Sultanat's feelings towards her partner changed significantly. She frequently shared with her friends how intelligent, educated, well-read, and articulate he was, and how he could easily engage in conversations on any topic. She also firmly denied any wrongdoing on his part in a high-profile corruption case that led to his brief imprisonment, insisting that he had been framed and was serving time for someone else's crime. On the surface, the couple seemed happy. Klondike showered his wife with gifts, and she affectionately referred to him as her golden husband, expressing that she had no regrets about marrying him. Their friends admired them and actually celebrated her marriage. However, this happiness was short-lived. The first warning sign appeared after their wedding when the couple moved into the home of the husband's parents. The parents lived on the first floor, while the newlyweds stayed on the second floor. Almira, the mother, tried to shower Sultanat with love and support, often giving her gifts and helping her from household chores. However, she was unable to protect Sultanat from her husband's behavior. Sultanat occasionally visited her parents with her husband, but she chose not to invite them to her home because it upset Klondike and led to arguments. Initially, her family was unaware of this, but less than a month after her wedding, her brother, Ibek, visited her on New Year's Eve and witnessed an uncomfortable situation. A large festive table was set up, but the celebration was meant to be a small family gathering. When her brother and his wife arrived with gifts for everyone, Sultanat felt embarrassed because she had no gift to offer in return. To resolve the awkwardness, she decided to give the woman a bottle of expensive perfume that her husband had bought for her the day before, which she hadn't opened yet. However, her actions not only upset her husband, they made him extremely angry. He yelled that she had no right to give away what he had given her and started insulting her. The guests, sensing the escalating tension, quickly decided to leave the house. The parents, attempting to defend their daughter-in-law, were abruptly silenced. To make matters worse, in his fury, Klondike overturned the table filled with food and drinks, ruining the New Year's Eve celebration. Ibek was taken aback by what he witnessed and was unsure how to respond. The following day, during a phone call, Sultanat revealed that her husband's behavior had drastically changed since their wedding. She didn't understand why and was hopeful that the situation would improve over time. Ibek advised her to come home and end the relationship, but Sultanat firmly rejected his advice. 2 months after the incident, Sultanat unexpectedly sent her brother some selfies. In these pictures, her face was covered with severe bruises, and she asked him not to ask her any questions. Concerned, her brother attempted to reach her by phone, but she didn't answer. He then called her husband, who agreed to meet for a discussion. During their meeting, Klondike, Sultanat's husband, told him to stay out of their affairs and refused to explain the bruises. He also couldn't tell him where she was, which left her brother feeling very uneasy. Fortunately, Sultanat was discovered in her parents' country apartment, where she had a set of keys. Despite her loved one's pleas, she decided to return to her husband, claiming that she loved him and was willing to do anything to save their marriage. For a while, her husband treated her well, showering her with gifts and promising to change for her. They even took a trip together to a popular resort in the Maldives, appearing very happy. However, later, the vacation photos revealing visible bruises on Sultanat's body and fingerprints on her wrists, suggesting she had been roughly grabbed. Ibeck stated that neither he nor his parents had heard his sister mention any issues in her marriage since then, although her behavior and appearance changes were telling. She had lost a significant amount of weight and became more reserved. She started wearing outfits that to cover up the bruises and cuts on her body. Additionally, she stopped taking appointments and ceased offering online consultations. On social media, she only posted photos with her husband, expressing her luck and love for him. As it later turned out, her husband prohibited her from pursuing her passion, leaving her without any income and fully dependent on him. He monitored all her actions and interactions. She needed his permission to meet friends or have lunch in a cafe without him. He even checked her phone calls and messages. Sultanat was only seen in public with Klondike, who acted like a devoted and caring husband. Most of her friends were unaware of the distress she faced at home and even envied what seemed to be a perfect family. Once, Sultanat recently shared with a close friend that her husband controlled every aspect of her life. He forbade her from working, prohibited her from communicating with her parents without his permission, and was unreasonably jealous, often accusing her of infidelity. He also physically abused her. When her friend heard this, she was shocked and urged the woman, Sultanat, to leave her husband right away. However, Sultanat reacted by yelling and insisted that she wasn't seeking advice, she simply wanted to talk about her situation. Sultanat, seeking to save their marriage, sought help from a family psychologist. However, her husband dismissed all the options suggested by his wife and insisted on using his own specialist. During their sessions, this psychologist convinced Sultanat that she was solely responsible for their problems. In a recent conversation with her brother, Sultanat expressed her concerns that her husband had hired the psychologist specifically to belittle and demoralize her once again. In the summer of 2023, Sultanat tried to leave her husband and planned to stay at her parents' house for a while. However, just a week later, Klondike came to take her back, asking her to give their marriage another chance. He suggested they move into his house, and Sultanat thought that a new environment might help their relationship. She also believed that having a child together would improve her husband's treatment of her, but she was unable to get pregnant. At the last family dinner in October, Sultanat attempted to leave her controlling husband and quickly sought a rented apartment with her brother's help. However, just 10 days later, she not only returned to him but also underwent the marriage ceremony again at the mosque, a fact she shared with her family. On November 5th, she invited her parents, brother, and a few close friends to a restaurant owned by Klondike's brother, Bakitsan Bazanov, to celebrate their reunion. During the ceremony, her husband acted very gallantly and courteously, showing his affection for her and vowing to protect her, while always keeping an affectionate eye on her. That evening, everyone was convinced of his genuine feelings and words, but tragedy was just days away. On November 9th of the same year, Sultanat's brother returned home from work and was going about his day when he received a phone call. A relative, sounding frightened, asked him if the rumors circulating on social media were true. Confused, he asked her to explain what was going on. She then sent him a link to a news article stating that the former Minister of Economy had killed his young wife. Ibeck was disheartened by the news but found it hard to believe what he read. Just the day before, he had spoken to his younger sister, who had once again mentioned that she planned to leave her husband. She had asked him if she could stay over at his place, and he told her she was welcome anytime, even pointing out where the spare keys were. However, neither that evening nor the following day did she come home, and her phone had been silent since then. The man hurried to his sister's house, but found it empty. Her husband was also not picking up his phone, and the situation was becoming urgent. They quickly decided to head to the family restaurant, where Sultanat had last reached out to them, to seek answers. While Ibeck was on the way, he received a call from his parents, who had seen the news and wanted to understand what was going on. However, he couldn't provide them with any information and only assured them he would find out more. Many police officers were present in the restaurant. When they learned that Sultanat's relative had arrived, they immediately offered their condolences, explaining that Sultanat had died before the medics could assist her. Ibek was in disbelief. He thought it must be a terrible mistake, but the news was unfortunately true. Witnesses indicated that by the time Ibek arrived, Kwondike had already been arrested and taken to the station as the main suspect. Kwondike firmly denied any wrongdoing, describing the incident as a tragic accident and insisting that he had been trying to help his wife. Additionally, his brother and who was the restaurant owner, Bakitsin Bazanov, were also taken into custody on suspicion of involvement. In the beginning, the suspect's lawyer claimed that his client was completely innocent and pointed out the lack of evidence against him. However, it was later revealed that the ex-minister and his brother had destroyed crucial evidence by deleting video recordings from cameras inside and outside the restaurant. Fortunately, experts were able to recover the footage, which shocked everyone who saw it. The investigation into this complex case lasted nearly 4 months, during which Kwondike continued to assert his innocence. He acted as though he believed he could escape punishment, even as he faced serious charges of murder with extreme cruelty. Forensic experts who examined the deceased noted that they had never seen such extensive and severe injuries before. Some of these injuries occurred 6 to 8 hours before her death, suggesting she was beaten for a long time, leaving no uninjured areas on her face and body. Kwondike's lawyers attempted to downplay his responsibility. He himself claimed that most of his wife's injuries were self-inflicted due to her being drunk, stating that she frequently fell and hit her head on the bathroom tiles and furniture. According to Kwondike testimony, on the evening of November 8, 2023, the couple attended a concert by singer Dima Bilan with friends. During the concert, they had a heated argument, but the friends couldn't clearly explain what it was about. The loud music made it hard for them to notice that Kwondike and Sultanat was fighting. They initially thought the couple were just having a discussion. Suddenly, the couple left the concert hall without saying a word. They then went to the Bao restaurant, where they continued their argument privately in a VIP cabin. The camera footage reveals that Kwondike took several bottles of alcohol from the bar and went to a booth with his wife. While they shared a bottle of wine and talked about their relationship, she expressed her dissatisfaction and announced her intention to leave him. This infuriated Kwondike. He screamed at her, threatened and slapped her. Following this, she called her brother and informed him that she would be staying at his house for the night because she had decided to leave her husband. Around midnight, as she was leaving for her brother's house, her husband confronted her and continued the argument. The surveillance footage reveals that the couple argued for about 15 minutes. Eventually, the man persuaded his spouse to re-enter the building for a short time. Inside, they continued to fight in the vestibule before isolating themselves in a stall, where there were no cameras, leaving us to speculate about what happened there. Footage from the hallway camera captures Sultanat attempting to escape from her husband. She acted calmly and maintained her distance while he repeatedly tried to close the gap, grabbing her hands, shaking his head, and pushing her against the wall. Sultanat, unable to escape, tried to hide from her abusive husband by locking herself in the bathroom. However, he began to kick the door violently, causing damage as he attempted to break in. When he finally got in, he struck her multiple times in the face. He then said that she was dependent on him, claiming that he had met all her needs. The husband alleged that in a fit of anger, Sultanat stripped off her clothes and jewelry, flushing them down the toilet to show that she did not want anything from him. Alternatively, some accounts suggest that he forced her to undress to humiliate her. After the gold jewelry fell down the drain, Kwondike became enraged and struck his wife multiple times in the face. He then pushed her forcefully, causing her to fall and hit the toilet. During the trial, He argued that his wife was drunk and had fallen several times while undressing, hitting her head on the tiles and plumbing. He claimed that they had planned to go home after leaving the restaurant, but he felt unable to drive because he had consumed too much alcohol. He also didn't want to call a cab because he was embarrassed by his wife's drunken state, as she was wearing a coat over her underwear. They returned to the booth in the same stall. Shortly after, the couple exited, but Sultanat paused to look at her injured face in the mirror. Her husband then aggressively pushed her towards the exit, leading to a violent confrontation. He brutally attacked her with his hands and feet and pulled her by her hair. Around 7 o'clock in the morning, he dragged her back to the VIP cabin. There, he ultimately caused her death, although during the trial, he claimed he hadn't harmed her, arguing that she had fallen and injured herself on the floor and furniture. He said that Sultanat lay on the sofa and fainted. He noticed a bruise on her face and felt worried, but instead of calling an ambulance, he contacted a fortune teller to see if everything was okay with his wife. The fortune teller assured him that she was just drunk and needed rest, which made Klondike feel more at ease and decide not to interfere. He mentioned hearing snoring, which he later realized was actually a death rattle. Around noon, he realized his wife was no longer breathing and urgently called his brother, Bakitson, for help. They decided to close the restaurant and asked the staff to leave. After that, they erased footage from all the CCTV cameras. During the trial, Bakitson stated he trusted his younger brother's claim that Sultanat was just drunk and asleep, and agreed to delete the recordings, which he believed showed her behaving inappropriately and bringing shame to herself and her family. Bakitson only called an ambulance later in the evening, by which time her body was already cold and rigor mortis had set in. He claimed he attempted to resuscitate her, but it was too late. Sultanat had already passed away. The investigation also focused on Nazim, Klondike's wife and mother of his 3 children. A few years prior, when the ex-minister was arrested for corruption, she defended him publicly. However, shortly after his release, she filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and stating that she had outgrown their marriage. However, after her ex-husband was publicly accused of brutally murdering his new wife, Nazim gave an honest interview. She acknowledged that he was indeed capable of such a crime. Nazim shared that they had been married for 14 years, but after the birth of their second child in 2011, her husband became aggressive, selfish, and narcissistic. He began to think the world should revolve around him, with his opinions as the most important. Furthermore, he constantly cheated on her, without any effort to hide it. Klondike was arrested in 2017, and it was only then that Nazim discovered the full extent of his infidelity by accessing his personal data on his phone. She learned that he had multiple mistresses, who frequently changed. After he was released by the Pardon Commission, he became increasingly violent and aggressive. A month later, a minor disagreement escalated between the couple, and in a fit of rage, he smashed the toilet lid and threw it at Nazim. Nazim successfully avoided confrontation, but in that moment, she understood that her marriage had come to an end. She believed that Klondike had suppressed his darker tendencies for a long time, knowing she would not accept such behavior. However, he did not hold back when it came to humiliating and insulting his mistresses, who were unable to resist him. Regarding Sultanat, Nazim thinks that Klondike deliberately selected his target and tested her patience and willingness to endure. Once he realized she would stay quiet and wouldn't leave, he revealed his true nature as a refined sadist. The trial started in March 2024, and it quickly became apparent that it would be challenging. The family of Sultanat demanded that the trial be as transparent as possible, allowing journalists to attend and the public to observe the proceedings. They were concerned that Klondike might leverage his wealth and extensive connections to pressure witnesses and judges in an effort to evade a severe punishment. He requested a jury trial, which was approved. A total of 12 jurors were chosen, 10 main jurors and 2 alternates, along with the presiding judge. Klondike had previously been convicted of a serious crime but was out on parole. A new serious offense could have led to a life sentence. In a jury trial, he would only face the death penalty if every juror, along with the judge, unanimously agreed. The chances of this happening were very low, so he held on to that hope. During the trial, he repeatedly claimed he was not guilty of premeditated murder with particular cruelty, arguing that the incident was accidental and resulted from a tragic mix of circumstances. He stated that his spouse provoked him by insulting him, yelling, and becoming physically aggressive. However, numerous recovered video recordings from surveillance cameras presented evidence that contradicted the initial claims. The authorities initially attempted to charge him with domestic violence, a crime in Kazakhstan that, due to lenient laws, does not carry severe penalties. This decision sparked significant criticism, particularly from the family of Sultanat. Her mother, in court, expressed her heartbreak over being unable to say goodbye to her daughter due to the severity of the injuries, while fearing that her son-in-law might face only a minor punishment, which shattered her faith in justice. In response to the public outrage, a new law was enacted in April 2024 to impose stricter penalties for domestic violence in Kazakhstan. Klondike pressured his brother, who was accused of being an accomplice, to provide false testimony to help him avoid consequences for his actions. However, Bekitson requested the court to protect him from Klondike, and this request was granted. Throughout the hearings, Klondike made numerous attempts to disparage his late wife, labeling her as inadequate, unbalanced, and an alcoholic who frequently cheated on him and provoked his anger. He tried to persuade the court that he acted out of passion that night and only struck his wife a couple of times, claiming those injuries were not fatal. He argued that all her other injuries were self-inflicted due to her frequent intoxication. He claimed that the bruises on her neck were caused by attempts to revive her, insisting that he was trying to help. But his brother, Bekitson, stated that Klondike prevented him from calling for medical assistance for Sultanat and was more interested in deleting footage from the cameras. Klondike then instructed him to take her cell phone back to their home to make it look like she was moving around the city, tricking her brother, Ibek, into believing she had returned to the apartment, even though he was monitoring her location. During the 9th hearing, he and his lawyer asked for the judge to step down, claiming they was biased. Their request was denied, and the judge continued overseeing the trial until a verdict was reached. On May 13, 2024, he was found guilty of serious charges, including inflicting bodily harm, torture, and murder of his common-law wife. He received a 20-year sentence for murder and an additional 7 years for battery and torture. In total, he was sentenced to 24 years in prison. His brother, Bekitson Bazanov, was also convicted, received a 4-year prison sentence for providing shelter. The court considered his lack of prior legal issues, his genuine remorse, and his full cooperation with the investigation. However, the family of the victim, Sultanat, expressed their dissatisfaction with the ruling. Her father had hoped for a life sentence for his former son-in-law, claiming that any lesser sentence would be unjust. Meanwhile, Sultanat's brother pointed out that a 24-year prison term for the 44-year-old defendant effectively amounted to a life sentence. The tragic story of Klondike Bishimbayev and Sultanat Nukhnova serves as a haunting reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic abuse and the complexities of relationships marred by control and violence. Despite Sultanat's initial dreams of independence and success, her life took a harrowing turn, ultimately leading to a heartbreaking end that shocked her loved ones and exposed the darker aspects of her husband's character. This narrative underscores the critical need for awareness, support systems, and interventions to protect individuals from the perilous cycle of abuse, highlighting the importance of listening to and believing victims before it's too late. The case of Drew Shoden. Drew Shoden was born on September 26, 1981, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to parents Alan and Linda. Although her parents divorced when Drew was 3, they remained friends. At age 10, Drew and her older brother Sven began living with their mother and her mother's new husband, Sid Walker, in a cozy home near Minnesota's picturesque Whitefish Lake. In high school, Drew excelled in school, earning honors, playing golf, and being named prom queen in 1999. Her true passion, however, was art. Her room at home was filled with sketches of rock stars, models, and friends. Drew graduated from high school and attended the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks, a city of about 50,000. Her friends knew her as a vibrant and compassionate person who loved helping others. Drew loved to travel and had long wanted to visit Australia, planning to make the trip in the spring of 2004. To save up for the trip, she worked 2 part-time jobs, one as a sales associate at Victoria's Secret and one as a waitress at a Grand Forks nightclub. On the evening of November 22, 2003, Drew finished her shift at the Victoria's Secret store in Columbia Mall at 4 p.m. Before heading to her second job at the nightclub, she decided to go shopping and purchase a purse from a store in the mall. While walking to her car in the parking lot, Drew called her boyfriend, Chris Lang. However, their conversation was cut short after Drew said, "Okay." Since they were not discussing anything important, Chris didn't think much of it and didn't call her back. About 3 hours later, Chris's phone rang. It was Drew, but instead of hearing her voice, Chris heard the sound of wind and the click of buttons on the phone. Drew lived in a college dorm with her friend Meg Murphy. At the same time Chris received a mysterious phone call, Meg received a call from the nightclub where Drew worked. The staff were trying to figure out why Drew had not shown up for her shift and had not answered her phone. As a responsible and punctual employee, her absence immediately worried her coworkers. However, Meg had no idea where Drew was and was surprised when Drew did not show up for work as scheduled. Meg contacted mutual friends and then called the local hospital. The hospital told her that Drew had not been admitted. Finding no information, Meg contacted the police around 9 p.m. A police officer was dispatched to the Columbia Mall, where Drew worked, to investigate. Although the mall was closed, the police drove through the parking lot and found Drew's car. The police found the car unlocked, with no signs of a struggle or any evidence of a crime. A black nylon sheath from a folding knife was found on the ground near the car. It is unclear whether this discovery is related to Drew's disappearance, but its presence is alarming. Inside the car, police found paperwork, a wallet, and a new wallet that Drew had purchased that day, suggesting that even if Drew had been in a threatening situation, it did not appear to be a robbery. Her friends, boyfriend, and parents had no idea where Drew might be. So police assumed it was a kidnapping. To begin with, police investigated her boyfriend Chris Lang, but quickly eliminated him as a suspect due to his location 300 miles from Grand Forks, Minnesota. Their conversations with Chris led them to discover that Drew had made 2 phone calls before she disappeared, the first of which was abruptly cut off, while the second call detected some noise. Police later found audio recordings from several hours after Drew's last call, which included wind and the sound of buttons being pressed. The next day, police went to the mall where Drew worked to review the security footage. Upon review, they found that there were no security cameras in the parking lot where Drew's car was parked. Fortunately, however, there were quite a few security cameras inside the mall. Police reviewing the footage found a key moment when Drew entered a local store after hours to purchase a purse. At the time, she appeared calm and unhurried, wearing a pink sweater and holding a jacket. Drew paid for her purchase at 4:55 p.m. and put on her jacket before leaving the store. When she got out, she called Chris. The call was recorded at exactly 5 p.m. Notably, the conversation between Drew and Chris ended abruptly 4 minutes later, at 5:04 p.m., after she said, "Okay." To better understand the events surrounding the call, a police officer decided to conduct an experiment. He set a timer for 4 minutes and walked from the store to the parking lot where Drew's car was parked, simulating her likely route. When the timer went off, the officer was already close to the parking lot where Drew's car was found, suggesting that something may have happened as she approached or reached her car. Unfortunately, the lack of cameras in the parking lot made it difficult for the police to piece together what happened next. Drew's disappearance attracted widespread media attention, and many people decided to take action and volunteer their time to help find her. In addition to the police, more than 1,000 volunteers joined the search for Drew. The FBI also joined the investigation. Tracing Drew's last phone call led police to the small town of Fisher in nearby Minnesota, about a 30-minute drive from where Drew worked. A map of the area between the two towns shows a large area of farmland. To thoroughly search the area, police used a variety of methods and vehicles. These included helicopters, ATVs, horseback riders, and dogs. Local landowners were also asked to check their properties for information. However, these efforts initially yielded no significant leads. As the days passed, police expanded their search. On the 4th day, a breakthrough in the investigation was made when a single shoe was discovered under a bridge in the town of Crookston. A roommate recalled that Drew had been wearing the shoes the day she disappeared. This identification was later confirmed by forensic analysis, verifying that the shoe did indeed belong to Drew. Crookston, a small town of less than 10,000 residents, is about 30 miles from Grand Forks, where Drew went missing. Despite conducting additional searches in the Crookston area, police were unable to find any significant information to assist in the case. An initial reward of $20,000 was offered for information leading to Drew's whereabouts, later increased to $140,000. At this point, the only potential lead was surveillance footage from the Columbia Mall. Police again reviewed hundreds of hours of footage from various cameras, but this time they changed their focus. Instead of just looking for Drew, they speculated that her abductor may have been following her and could also be seen on the videos. Police reviewed the security footage for several hours before finding a suspect that caught their attention. A man wandered around the mall, not shopping and appearing to be more interested in observing the people around him than the merchandise. He eventually sat down on a bench near the mall exit at 3:41 p.m., where he continued to observe people passing by. About 10 minutes later, he put on black gloves and stood up from the bench. He then walked into the lobby, where a camera captured him as he looked up at the camera. This footage was recorded 72 minutes before Drew's conversation with her boyfriend was interrupted. After observing the man stand up from his bench and follow a blonde woman who passed him, who was carrying a grocery cart and heading toward the parking lot. Police did not consider this a coincidence. Instead, in their opinion, the man appeared to have chosen a suitable victim and followed her. The identity of this woman is unknown, but on that day, only Drew disappeared from the mall parking lot. Given the slight resemblance between Drew and the woman, this suspicious man further raised suspicions that he was involved in Drew's disappearance. The investigation into Drew's abduction led police to consider a suspect who was seen stalking a woman at the mall. If for some reason he did not abduct this woman, his next target could be Drew. She left the mall around 5 p.m. after dark. The timing could have worked in his favor. At this point in the investigation, there were 3 cities involved in the case: Grand Forks, where Drew was abducted; Fisher, where her phone was last active; and Crookston, where her shoe was found. With this data, the FBI began checking the records of all registered sex offenders from those cities and the surrounding area, comparing the photos from the records with the suspicious man from the mall. Only one man fit all the parameters: Alfonso Rodriguez, who had a history of repeated crimes against women. The 50-year-old had been in prison for the past 23 years. Alfonso was born the second of 5 children in Laredo, Texas, in February 1953 to immigrant laborers Dolores and Alfonso Rodriguez. His childhood was not a happy one, with his parents constantly criticizing him and having high expectations. His family moved frequently, moving from state to state for 15 years, before finally settling in Crookston in 1963. This constant moving contributed to Alfonso's growing sense of isolation, which was exacerbated by the fact that his primary language was Spanish, while English was primarily spoken at school. As a result, Alfonso struggled academically and eventually dropped out of school in the 9th grade. He then began working as a laborer at the American Sugar Company's refined sugar plant in Crookston. Alfonso claimed that he had been molested by older women as a child, which he believed led to him developing a hostility towards women. In October 1974, when he was 21, Alfonso asked a woman for a ride home but instead took her to a driveway in Crookston, where he attacked her, choked her, and attempted to force her to have sex with him. The following month, Alfonso approached another woman sitting in a van outside a cinema in Crookston, threatened her with a knife, and forced her to a secluded rural location, where he raped her. In 1979, Alfonso attempted to abduct a 69-year-old high school English teacher while she was walking at night in Crookston. When the woman resisted his attempts to force her into his car, Alfonso became enraged and stabbed her in the elbow and abdomen. However, she escaped and ran to safety. The victim drew a composite sketch of Alfonso that closely resembled him, leading to his arrest. He was convicted of attempted kidnapping and aggravated assault and sentenced to 23 years in prison. After serving his full sentence, Alfonso was released from prison in May 2003, just 6 months before Drew went missing. At the time of his release, Alfonso was registered as a level 3 sex offender, indicating a high risk of reoffending. His family expressed concern that he would reoffend after his release, but he was released from prison because he had completed his sentence. After his release, Alfonso moved in with his mother in Crookston, a town near the bridge where Drew's shoe was discovered. This was another piece of evidence that did not favor him. Police questioned Alfonso, who denied any involvement in Drew's disappearance. When asked about his whereabouts on the day of Drew's disappearance, Alfonso claimed that he had gone to a movie theater at the Columbia Mall to see the movie Once Upon a Time in Mexico. However, police later discovered that no movie theater in Grand Forks was showing that movie on the day Drew went missing. Police searched Alfonso's car and found evidence that led them to believe that Drew was unlikely to have survived. The police department began to focus their search efforts instead of their rescue efforts. In Alfonso's car, they found several dark red stains that forensic experts later confirmed were drops of Drew's blood. And blood and dirt were found on the back of the passenger seat. A knife found in the trunk matched the sheath found in the parking lot near Drew's car. Alfonso had purchased the knife from a hardware store near the parking lot where Drew disappeared. Police gathered enough evidence to charge Alfonso 8 days after Drew's disappearance. Alfonso Rodriguez was arrested on December 1, 2003. Despite the evidence, Alfonso maintained his innocence while in custody at the Grand Forks jail and refused to cooperate with the investigation or provide any information about Drew. During a pre-trial hearing, Alfonso's bail was set at $5 million. Meanwhile, police continued to search for Drew in the area surrounding the 3 towns, despite difficult conditions due to heavy snowfall. In an unprecedented move, the governors of North Dakota and Minnesota pledged at a press conference on December 9th to assist in the search for Drew, and hundreds of members of the National Guard and other state personnel joined the search. However, despite these joint efforts, no progress was made, and the search was eventually suspended due to worsening weather conditions. In the spring, search efforts for Drew intensified as the winter snow began to melt. After 5 months of searching, Drew's body was finally found on April 17, 2004. The body was found in a field in Crookston, just a few miles from the bridge where the shoe was discovered. Drew's family was devastated by the heartbreaking discovery. The discovery confirmed their worst fears and would have a lasting impact on their lives. Notably, the field where the body was found was searched, but apparently because there was so much snow they were unable to find her body. Drew was found naked from the waist down, suggesting a clear motive for the crime. Her hands were tied behind her back, and a rope was wrapped around her neck with pieces of plastic bags left underneath. This suggested that the bag had originally been placed over Drew's head before being secured with a rope. Alfonso's hair was found on Drew's jacket. She had suffered severe beatings and multiple stab wounds before her death. According to the medical examiner, there were 3 possible causes of her death: neck trauma, asphyxiation, or hypothermia. After months of waiting, Drew's family was finally able to say goodbye to her at a ceremony on April 24, 2004. The event was attended by approximately 1,500 people. Drew was abducted in North Dakota, which abolished the death penalty in 1975. Likewise, Minnesota, where her body was discovered, does not have the death penalty. However, because Drew was transported across state lines, the crime was classified as a federal crime, giving the prosecutor's office the authority to pursue the death penalty against Alfonso. Alfonso Rodriguez, convicted on August 30, 2006, the jury recommended the death penalty, which was formally imposed by Judge Ralph Erickson on February 8, 2007. Alfonso became the first person to be sentenced to death in North Dakota in nearly 100 years. Alfonso spent 6 years on death row, and on June 28, 2013, Alfonso confessed that he was the one who kidnapped and killed Drew. However, the story does not end there. Ralph Erickson, the former district judge who sentenced Alfonso to death, became a judge on the United States Court of Appeals, and it was he who overturned his own conviction of Alfonso in 2021 and ordered a new sentencing phase. Alfonso's guilt was beyond doubt and was confirmed by various DNA tests. However, Judge Ralph Erickson was misled by the defense attorneys about not having Alfonso's mental health examined. Judge Ralph later overturned the death sentence, saying that the police had not examined Alfonso's mental health at the time of the crime, thus violating his constitutional rights. After Alfonso's original death sentence was overturned, the federal prosecutor's office initially announced that they would pursue the death penalty again. However, 2 years later, in 2023, prosecutors reversed their decision, accepting that Alfonso's sentence had been commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In a public statement, United States Attorney Max Schneider announced that the United States government has withdrawn its intention to seek the death penalty against Alfonso Rodriguez. On June 22, 2013, it was reported that Alfonso Rodriguez had been transferred from death row in Terre Haute, Indiana, to the high-security Coleman II prison in Sumterville, Florida. This prison is likely to be his final place of incarceration. The case of Lauren Burke. Lauren Ashley Burke was born on December 30, 1989, in Marietta, Georgia. Her parents, James Burke and Vivian Gershon, subsequently divorced. She had a sister named Jacqueline and a brother named Chad. After graduating from high school, Lauren attended Auburn University, where she studied graphic design, participated actively in the Delta Gamma sorority, played lacrosse, and engaged with the campus community. Lauren was described by her friends as a friendly and outstanding student, always smiling, happy, and eager to help. While in high school, she began dating a boy named Sean. After graduating, they both attended Auburn University, where they maintained their relationship. At this stage in their lives, education was a top priority for both. However, they also actively made future plans together. Sadly, not all of Lauren's dreams and aspirations were meant to be realized. On the morning of March 4, 2008, Lauren had breakfast at a cafe with her boyfriend, Sean, At 11 a.m., she attended class and then called her father, James, to talk about spring break plans and a dental visit. After her conversation with her father, she went to Sean's dorm and spent time there until the evening. She had a study appointment at 8:30 p.m. with her classmate, Michael, in the library. When Lauren left Sean's room around 8 p.m., it was already dark outside. She walked to her 2001 Honda Civic, which was parked in the lot beside the dorm. This was the last time Sean saw Lauren. Michael was supposed to meet Lauren at the library, but when she didn't show up, he began calling her cell phone repeatedly. After several calls, Lauren finally answered and informed him that she wouldn't be coming to the library because she had forgotten their appointment. She hung up shortly afterward. Later, around 9 p.m., 911 received a report about an injured girl lying on the road between Farmville Baptist Church and Route 280 on the 147 freeway. The girl was Lauren. Drivers stopped their cars, causing traffic to back up in both directions. Lauren was on her back in the middle of the road, struggling to breathe. She had multiple injuries and was only wearing socks. At 9:12 p.m., the first police car arrived at the scene, where Lauren was unconscious. A few minutes later, paramedics arrived and found her pulse barely detectable as they loaded her into the ambulance. By 9:35 p.m., Lauren was at East Alabama Medical Center, where doctors began attempts to save her life. Earlier, at 9:27 p.m., 911 dispatchers had received several reports of a car fire on the Auburn University campus, prompting an immediate response from firefighters and police. However, amidst a crowd of curious students gathered near the burning car, police could not locate the car owner. They checked the license plates and identified the car's owner as James Burke. James Burke is the father of Lauren. The police contacted him by phone to inform him that the Honda involved in a fire belonged to his daughter. Concerned, James immediately asked about her condition, but the police had no information. They did not know where Lauren was and confirmed that she was not in the burning car. After speaking with the officer, James tried calling Lauren's cell phone, but she didn't answer, increasing his worry. Unable to get in touch with her, he first called her friends, but none could provide any details about her location or the incident. Next, he reached out to his ex-wife hoping she might have some information, but she was also unaware of what had happened. At 9:40 p.m., Vivian called her daughter's boyfriend, Sean, to inform him that Lauren was missing and her car had been burned. Concerned, Sean reached out to mutual friends to see if anyone had seen Lauren that evening. He discovered that she had canceled a meeting at the library, claiming she had forgotten about it. However, Sean knew that Lauren had not forgotten, as she had planned to go directly to the library after leaving his place about 2 hours earlier. While family and friends were trying to locate Lauren, doctors at East Alabama Medical Center were working hard to save her life. They didn't know her name since she was brought in unconscious and without any personal belongings or identification. Sadly, despite the doctors' best efforts, they could not save Lauren's life, and she was pronounced dead about an hour after arriving at the hospital. The cause of death was a single bullet wound that had penetrated both of her lungs. Experts determined that the gun was fired from just a few inches away from her skin. Police officers, while investigating the connection between Lauren's death and a burned-out car on campus belonging to a missing person, quickly identified the victim as Lauren Burke. The day after her death, on March 5, 2008, James traveled from Atlanta to identify his daughter's body. The news of Lauren's death rapidly circulated throughout the campus. Auburn University issued a statement regarding Lauren's passing, advising students and staff to be more vigilant both on and off campus, while also reassuring them that the campus remained safe. The statement emphasized, "Many of you and your parents have called and are understandably concerned. There is no indication of any additional danger to campus or student safety." Auburn police spokesman Captain Tom Stouffer stated, We are dedicating all our resources to finding the person responsible for this crime. Auburn, Alabama is a peaceful community for students, and incidents like this affect us deeply. When someone is harmed or loses their life, it impacts us all. We will not stop until we identify the perpetrator. He also mentioned that Alabama Governor Bob Riley has announced a $10,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest in Lauren's case. Lauren's burned car was transported to the Auburn Police Department, where investigators from the State Forensic Laboratory and officers from the State Fire Chief's office examined the charred interior. They discovered pieces of burned clothing, Lauren's melted digital camera, and the car owner's manual. A .38 caliber bullet was found under the front seat, suggesting that the car's interior may have been the crime scene and that the arsonist intended to destroy evidence by setting it on fire. Detectives interviewed Lauren's family, friends, and boyfriend, but none could identify anyone who wanted to harm her or had the motive to do so. Investigators searched Sean's dorm room, where Lauren had been before her death, but found no evidence linking him to the crime. After talking to Michael, whom Lauren was supposed to meet at the library, detectives learned that when Lauren answered his call, he heard a sound that resembled a moving car. Additionally, it was discovered that someone had used Lauren's bank card multiple times shortly after she was found on the road. This suggested that the person who used her bank card might be connected to her incident, prompting the police to start searching for him. Less than 3 days after Lauren's passing, an unexpected event occurred. On March 7, 2008, at 9:55 a.m., a man of African descent assaulted a 72-year-old woman in the parking lot of a Walmart in Noonan, Georgia, about 75 miles from Auburn. As she was getting into her car, he struck her on the head, threatened her, and ordered her to enter the passenger seat. After getting into the driver's seat, he attempted to flee the parking lot but realized that an eyewitness was following him while on the phone. The thought that the eyewitness might call the police made the man return to the Walmart parking lot. He parked the stolen vehicle, got out, ran to a nearby Chrysler Sebring, entered it, and quickly drove away. A few hours later, 4 officers pursued the fleeing Chrysler at high speed towards Columbus, West Georgia. The driver ignored all attempts to stop, putting other road users at risk. During the pursuit, police saw the driver throw something out of the window. One of the police teams stopped to search for the object and found a .38 caliber revolver on the side of the road. The chase continued until high vehicle broke down, causing smoke to pour from the hood. The driver suddenly stopped in the road and opened the door. A police officer on a motorcycle, chasing the suspect, collided with the open door. The impact caused the officer to be thrown over the handlebars and onto the pavement, but he was fortunately not seriously injured. The suspect then ran into the nearby woods in an attempt to escape. However, the police quickly apprehended him and placed handcuffs on his wrists. He was Courtney Lockhart, born on October 20, 1984. His family remembers him as a friendly and fun-loving person until he joined the U.S. Army. He was deployed to Iraq in 2004 and returned in 2005, but he came back a changed man. His mother observed that he was no longer the Courtney she once knew. She noted that he had been cheerful before his deployment, but after returning from Iraq, he never smiled again. He became very cautious about his surroundings and sometimes even hid in the closet or under the bed. In 2006, Courtney and his girlfriend, who had already broken up, welcomed a daughter. That same year, he faced a court-martial for assaulting fellow soldiers, using illegal drugs, and deserting his unit without permission. He spent 7 months in detention and was dishonorably discharged from the Army in December 2006. As 2008 neared, Courtney's behavior deteriorated significantly. He rarely showered, stopped seeing his daughter, and became severely addicted to illegal drugs. In February 2008, he began a series of burglaries. Aside from one robbery at a convenience store, his approach was consistent, He would approach women from behind as they were getting into their cars in parking lots, threaten them with a gun, demand their purses, and try to steal their cars. One of these attacks led to the death of Lauren. Courtney's crime spree ended on March 7, 2008, when he attacked a 72-year-old woman and could not escape from the police. After his arrest, 23-year-old Courtney was brought to the police station, where he confessed to kidnapping and killing Lauren. The interrogation was videotaped and served as crucial evidence during the trial. Furthermore, Lauren's personal items, including her iPod and bank cards, were discovered in his car. Courtney provided a detailed description of the events from the day he kidnapped Lauren, which took place on Tuesday, March 4, 2008. Courtney woke up in his Chrysler Sebring after spending the night in his car near East Alabama Medical Center. He was in need of money, so he drove around Auburn searching for a potential target. It's important to mention that all his victims were women. He never targeted men. His drive took him to Auburn University, where he parked near the student dormitories. He spent several hours in his car observing the students. Around 8 p.m., he saw a girl walk up to the car next to him and casually open the door. It was Lauren. Without thinking much, Courtney grabbed his revolver and approached Lauren from behind, pressing the gun against her. He asked her how much money she had. When she didn't respond, he forced her into the front passenger seat of the car and took the driver's seat. Courtney claimed that Lauren didn't speak but screamed in fear. Once she calmed down, she took out $200 from her purse, gave it to him, and pleaded with him to let her go. Instead of leaving, he ordered Lauren to undress at gunpoint. Fearing for her safety, Lauren complied, removing all her clothing except for a pair of socks. Courtney believed that by making her undress, she would be less likely to try to escape. He then drove around Auburn, controlling the car with one hand while aiming the gun at Lauren with the other. As she tried to convince him not to go through with his plan, he lamented that his life was over. In response, Lauren promised to help him find a job. At one point, Lauren's phone rang. Courtney urged her to answer it and come up with a believable excuse. It was Michael calling, who was waiting for Lauren at the library. When she picked up the phone, she quickly said she had forgotten about the meeting and hung up. Courtney mentioned that they continued driving through the city, while Lauren persistently tried to persuade him to let her go, insisting that she could help him through his troubles. While driving on Highway 147, Lauren suddenly opened the door and attempted to jump out of the moving car. At that moment, Courtney accidentally fired a shot. The bullet struck both of Lauren's lungs, and she also suffered injuries from the fall. Despite her injuries, she was able to wave to passing drivers until she eventually lost consciousness. Courtney told investigators that he parked near the church and observed as cars began to stop next to Lauren on the pavement. Realizing that the police would arrive soon, he quickly fled, intending to destroy any evidence left in the car. Investigators began to question the truthfulness of Courtney's testimony. They suspected that Courtney had made Lauren undress, not to prevent her from escaping as he claimed, but for another reason altogether. However, Lauren managed to jump out of the moving car, foiling Courtney's intentions. The investigators also questioned whether Courtney had accidentally shot Lauren, as it seemed unlikely. He had served in the army and was familiar with firearms. It appeared more plausible that Lauren recognized Courtney wouldn't let her go and believed her only chance for escape was to jump out. As she opened the door and jumped out of the car, Courtney deliberately shot her. Ballistics testing confirmed that the bullet found in Lauren's car was fired from the gun that Courtney had discarded while fleeing from the police. Experts conducted tests and determined that the gun could not have discharged accidentally. The trigger needed to be pulled firmly to fire a shot. Lauren's family and friends held a farewell for her on March 9th, the same day investigators questioned Courtney for the second time. The following day, he was officially charged multiple times in connection with the Lauren case. The trial commenced on November 8, 2010. Courtney's lawyers argued that their client suffered from a mental illness linked to his military service and that the shooting of Lauren was unintentional. Court records show that Courtney pleaded not guilty by reason of mental defect or insanity. A psychologist testified in court, stating that Courtney had an IQ of 86, which is below average, and exhibited some symptoms from his combat experience, although he did not have PTSD. The psychologist also described Courtney as immature and lacking clear judgment. The state tried to present evidence about Courtney's other crimes and his misconduct in the military, but the trial judge did not allow it. After the trial's guilt phase, the sentencing phase began right away. Courtney brought in witnesses and evidence to portray himself as a war hero who was mentally affected by combat and the death of his commanding officer. The jury reached a special verdict, noting that an additional aggravating factor was that a life was taken during the kidnapping. The jury unanimously recommended a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. However, the trial judge ultimately rejected the jury's recommendation for a lesser sentence and sentenced Courtney to death. In a detailed 28-page order, the judge outlined his reasons for this decision. He emphasized that the severity of the kidnapping made the death penalty justified. The victim, who was unarmed and chosen at random, was alone when she was abducted. The judge pointed out that the crime was particularly horrifying because it occurred on a college campus, a setting where students expect to feel safe. Courtney not only forced the victim into her own car, but also made her undress and threatened her with a gun to prevent her from escaping. The court highlighted that the jury did not know about Courtney's criminal activities or the real details of their military service. While the jury received some information about Courtney's service, they were not informed about the complete disciplinary history. The judge noted that if the jury had been aware of this additional information, their recommendation for sentencing would probably have been different. 15 years have passed since Lauren's death, and Courtney Remains was on death row in Alabama, continuing his efforts to appeal his sentence. After being convicted and sentenced to death, he first appealed to an Alabama court, which upheld his sentence in August 2013. In April 2014, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals rejected Courtney's request for a retrial. He subsequently appealed to the Supreme Court of Alabama, but his motion was denied again in September 2014. In January 2015, Courtney appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States, but in April 2015, his petition was also denied. In 2018, Courtney attempted once more to contest his sentence. Lawyers from a human rights organization representing him argued that the attorneys who defended Courtney in 2010 had mishandled his case. Although there were some issues with Courtney's defense in 2010, these issues did not affect the final decision and his death sentence was upheld. In April 2021, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals confirmed Courtney's death sentence. Lauren's parents are determined to prevent the overturning of Courtney Lockhart's death sentence. Jim, Lauren's father, stated, "Courtney Lockhart was responsible for my daughter's death. He deserves the death penalty." Vivian, Lauren's mother, added, "He didn't give her a second chance, so he shouldn't be given one either." Currently, Courtney Lockhart is still on death row in Alabama. The case of Jody Sanderholm. Jody Sanderholm was born on September 26, 1987, in Arkansas City, Arkansas, to Brian and Cindy Sanderholm. She has two siblings, an older brother named Jason and an older sister named Jennifer, and is the third child in the family. From an early age, Jody developed a passion for dance and excelled academically. She graduated as one of 4 valedictorians in her high school class. In high school, Jody's academic achievements included membership in the National Honor Society and recognition as a Kansas State Scholar and a Kansas Board of Regents Scholar. She also received the David Steinamitzy Outstanding Physics Student of the Year Award. In addition to her academic pursuits, Jody was an active member of the Ark City dance team for 4 years, serving as captain for 2 years. After graduating, Jody attended Cowley College, where she studied pre-med and was a member of the Cowley Tigerette dance team. In 2007, Arkansas City had a population of approximately 12,000. Many residents, including Jody's parents, considered it a safe and suitable place to live and raise children. On the morning of January 5, 2007, Jody drove to the college to attend dance practice that was scheduled to end at 10:45. She planned to return home afterward. However, when her mother, Cindy, tried to contact her on her cell phone several times after practice, Jody did not answer. This was out of character for Jody, who usually kept in touch with her family and answered the phone promptly. As a result, Cindy's anxiety increased and she left work early to go home and check on Jody. When Cindy arrived home, she immediately noticed that her daughter's car was not in front of the house, which made her even more worried because she knew that Jody should have returned from practice by now. Upon entering the house and looking around, Cindy realized that Jody had not returned. However, Jody's dance uniform was nowhere to be found. It was not in the washing machine or the dirty clothes hamper, although she usually washed it after practice. The bathroom was dry, which was unusual because Jody always showered after dance class. Further investigation revealed that Jody had not contacted her father or sister Jennifer as planned. She had an appointment at noon but did not show up. Her parents Cindy and Brian attempted to call Jody's friends to see if they had any information about her whereabouts, but their efforts were unsuccessful. None of her friends had seen her after her morning practice at the university. That evening, the college dance team was scheduled to perform at a basketball game with a routine choreographed by Jody. But Jody did not show up. When her parents, Cindy and Brian, were unable to reach her by 6 p.m., they decided to report her missing to the police. The sheriff's office quickly created posters with Jody's description, began investigating her last known location, and issued a comprehensive bulletin about the car she was traveling in. Police discovered that Jody had a boyfriend, Colby Wilson, whom she had been dating since high school. Cindy and Brian provided this information. Police contacted Colby by phone, and he explained that he had been visiting his brother in Texas for a few days. After verifying his alibi and confirming that he was in another state, the police eliminated him as a potential suspect. On January 6th, the investigation took a new turn. Lori Leglighter, Jody's longtime friend and dance partner from high school, shared key details with police. Lori and Jody both attended Cowley College, pursuing dance together. Lori reported that she left work at the Sirloin Stockade in Arkansas City around 10 p.m. on Tuesday, January 2nd, and saw a light blue car drive by the restaurant several times. As she left on her way home, she saw a car following her in her rearview mirror. Lori suspected something was wrong and decided to check to see if the car behind her was really following her, so she turned onto several different streets. However, the driver continued to follow her. Much to Lori's horror, she drove to the local police station and parked nearby, and hoped that the proximity to the police would deter the person from further harassing her. After stopping, she no longer saw the suspicious car and felt safer, so she headed home. However, when she saw the car again, Lori returned to the parking lot near the police station. This time, she waited in her car for a while before deciding to drive home. She later confessed to the police that she had the opportunity to report the incident to the police, but hesitated, initially thinking that it might be someone else's silly prank. But it turned out not to be the case. On Friday, January 5th, the Tigerette dance group, which included Lori and Jody, was practicing at the university. As usual, Lori and Jody arrived at the same time and parked their cars close to each other. Lori saw the light blue car again. Moreover, she recognized the man behind the wheel. It was a local resident, Justin Thurber, 23. Lori did not know him but had seen him several times with his brother and friends. Lori and Jody left practice at the same time and planned to meet up later, but Jody never showed up to the meeting. Soon after, several members of the dance team revealed that they had also seen Justin near the university over the past week. He had been sitting in his car in the parking lot, just watching. In the 24 hours after Jody went missing, police conducted a thorough search of the city but were unable to find her car. The fields and wooded areas around Arkansas City made the search difficult. To aid in the search, a plane was brought in to scan the area from above. Police believed they had a chance to spot the car from the air. It was discovered that Jody's cell phone had last pinged from a cell tower near the Call Wildlife Refuge, a large wooded area along the Arkansas River. At this point in the investigation, Justin Thurber was identified as a person of potential interest in Jody's disappearance, according to information from Lori Legliner and other members of the dance group. It is important to note that despite his young age, Justin was already known to the police. 3 years earlier, in 2004, he had faced charges of possession of a controlled substance. Despite being on probation, he had not stayed out of trouble. Justin was arrested in October 2005 for theft and violating his probation. 3 months later, he was charged with disorderly conduct. Just 6 days before Jody went missing on December 31, 2006, Justin was arrested for petty theft and found in possession of narcotics. After posting $3,000 bail, he was released on New Year's Eve. However, he quickly returned to his old ways and on January 1, 2007, he impersonated a police officer and caused a public nuisance. The police came to arrest him, but Justin was instead taken to the hospital after complaining of chest pains. It is unclear why he was not arrested after being released from the hospital. One possible reason is that he has a relative who works for the Cowley County Police, but this is only speculation. On January 6th, a police officer spotted Justin's light blue Cadillac parked outside his parents' home. The officer decided to speak with Justin and was invited inside by Justin's father. When asked about his whereabouts the previous day, Justin explained that he had driven to Winfield, a town 13 miles from Arkansas City, in the morning. There, he met a friend and 2 acquaintances of that friend, whom he did not know well. Justin claimed that the 4 of them drove around the countryside in one of the acquaintances' cars until it got stuck on a dirt road near Cedar Vale. Justin then allegedly walked 30 miles to Arkansas City but stopped after 6 hours due to fatigue. He called his father to pick him up, which his father confirmed, saying that he found Justin wet and dirty a few miles from Cowley State Fishing Lake. Justin also told the police that his car, which had been left in Winfield, had been returned to him by friends. The police found Justin's story unconvincing but lacked enough evidence to charge him. So they left without taking further action. That evening, the police spoke with Alexis Schwartzel, who had just broken up with Justin after 3 years of dating. They asked her about the places she and Justin had been, and she specifically mentioned the Cole Wildlife Refuge in southeast Arkansas City. The police told Alexis that they were investigating the disappearance of Jody Sanderholm, to which she expressed great surprise. During the conversation, Alexis revealed a disturbing fact about Justin. She said that Justin had told her that he had started stalking Jody when she was 13 years old. He would often peek at Jody while she was swimming in the backyard pool. On some evenings, he even lurked outside her window, waiting for her to change her clothes. Alexis told police that she had broken up with Justin because of his abusive behavior, which had become increasingly disturbing. Specifically, she reported that during intimate moments, he would choke her to the point of unconsciousness. Furthermore, he had asked her to hit him, as this was the only way he could get aroused. As the investigation continued, police increasingly suspected that Justin might be involved in Jody's disappearance, despite the lack of concrete evidence. However, on the evening of January 6th, Officer Eric Mata arrested Justin on charges unrelated to Jody's disappearance, revocation of bail and suspicion of criminal trespass. This decision was made after it was discovered that Justin had been on university property, where police believed he should not have been. Justin asked to speak with his attorney while police arrived at his parents' home with a search warrant. When they arrived, they took Justin's shoes that he had worn the day before when his father picked him up. The shoes were still wet and were drying on a towel. Justin's father told police that he had helped his son clean the mud off the shoes. Police also found the clothes Justin had been wearing at the time but could not use them as evidence because he had washed them. The next day, January 7th, searchers trained to identify human activity in rough terrain began their work at the Cole Wildlife Refuge. They found a shoe print that matched Justin's along with several smaller shoe prints in the area. However, as it got dark, they decided to call off the search and resume the next day. Some searchers on their way home passed the Cowley County fishing pond and stopped to investigate after learning that Justin was wet when his father picked him up. Their search led them to muddy tire tracks and shoe prints near a public restroom. They discovered a letter addressed to Jody's parents in a chemical restroom, dance shoes in another, and a pair of flip-flops. Police found several items, including Jody's driver's license and social security card in her purse, her black jumpsuit, and a tigerette jacket with her name on the front. They also discovered cut-off athletic shorts, a car floor mat, a car seat cushion, and a pair of sandals that matched the footprints found at the Cole Wildlife Sanctuary. After conducting a 2-day search around Cowley County Fishing Lake and the Cole Wildlife Sanctuary, experts with sonar equipment were brought in to survey the lake bottom. On January 9th, they discovered Jody's submerged car. Unfortunately, on the same day, Jody's body was also found at the Cole Wildlife Sanctuary, hidden under a pile of leaves, logs, and branches and without any clothing. Authorities discovered DNA evidence that linked Justin to both Jody's car and her body. Initially, police were concerned that water in the car would destroy any evidence, making the search more difficult. However, forensic experts eventually discovered a short hair in the car. Terry Melton, director of the Forensic DNA Laboratory, conducted a DNA test on the hair found on Jody's driver's seat and concluded that it was definitely Justin's. Barbara Leal, an employee of a private DNA testing company, tested samples taken from Jody's right bicep and right breast. She concluded that Justin could not be excluded from the list of participants. Although 99% of the population could be excluded. Investigations using cell tower data showed that Jody's phone and Justin's phone were in close proximity to each other on the day Jody went missing. This finding was confirmed by Jody's best friend, Lori Leglider, who claimed to have seen Justin in the university parking lot that day. Further evidence from the university's security camera footage supported Lori's story. The footage showed Justin in the parking lot at the same time as Jody's practice and leaving at the same time as her. Furthermore, the footage showed Justin following Jody in his light blue Cadillac. Additional evidence included letters addressed to Jody's parents, which were later found near the lake. Police suspect that Justin followed Jody home from a university and attacked her while she went to get the mail. He then pushed her into her car and drove away. A key piece of evidence supporting this theory was the discovery of shoe prints next to Jody's family mailbox that matched the soles of Justin's sneakers. In addition, police found footprints at the Cole Wildlife Refuge that matched Justin's shoes, as well as smaller shoe prints that were later identified as Jody's. Along the shore of the fishing lake, they discovered Jody's shoes and other belongings. Further analysis of the footprints in the reserve revealed that Justin and Jody's footprints were initially side by side, indicating that they had been walking together. However, at a certain point, Jody's footprints stopped, while Justin's continued deeper into the woods, indicating that he had been carrying her. Justin's footprints eventually led to the location where Jody's body was found. Justin claimed to have been with 3 people on the day Jody went missing, but when questioned, they all denied seeing him. This meant that Justin's story about his car getting stuck near Cedar Vale was a lie. To investigate further, the police took Justin to Cedar Vale, but he was unable to find the location where he claimed his car got stuck. Upon returning to the police station, Justin surprised the officers by agreeing to take a polygraph test. He also requested that his relative, Chad Monroe, an employee of the Cowley County Sheriff's Office, be present during questioning. The evidence gathered was enough for a grand jury to indict Justin, despite his claim of innocence. The judge set Justin's bail at $1 million. His defense team attempted to argue that he was mentally incompetent to stand trial, but they were unsuccessful in their efforts. Because Justin had a high school diploma and several college degrees. During the trial, the medical examiner who performed Jody's autopsy testified about the severe injuries she suffered. Based on the results of the autopsy, the medical examiner confirmed that Jody's final hours were extremely painful. She had bruises and abrasions all over her body and face, and the cause of her death was strangulation. The severity of the violent injuries Jody suffered was terrifying, showing the brutality of Justin's crimes. It can be said that Justin's actions were motivated by a sick desire. And he used a stick to commit the heinous crime at the Cole Wildlife Refuge. At the trial, 7 women, including Justin's ex-girlfriend, testified against him. They all claimed to have been stalked by Justin. One of the women worked with him and had a particularly terrifying experience. After seeing Justin waiting for her in the parking lot after work, she was too scared to walk alone to her car in the dark. As a result, she had to call the police to take her to her car. Prior to this incident, he had left a romantic gesture of a rose and a note in her car, expressing his interest in getting to know her better. In regards to Jody's disappearance, several witnesses reported seeing her car on January 5, 2007. Carrie Morris, a friend of Jody's, saw Jody that day in Arkansas City. Around noon, Carrie walked by Jody's car and saw Jody sitting in the passenger seat. The man driving the car appeared to be a large man. Carrie attempted to contact Jody on her cell phone but received no response. 2 witnesses reported seeing a vehicle similar to Jody's on a dirt road south of Arkansas City at approximately 3 p.m. One of the witnesses identified the driver as Justin. After a trial, the jury returned the unanimous verdict on February 17, 2009, finding Justin Thurbert guilty on all charges and recommending the death penalty. Anticipating a harsh sentence, Justin's attorney attempted to negotiate a plea bargain. The proposal included Justin pleading guilty in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. However, Jody's family objected to the deal. Ultimately, the judge reviewed the jury's decision and sentenced Justin to death by lethal injection in March 2009. In 2008, the state of Kansas signed the Jody Act, which included provisions that expanded police powers over stalking suspects and expanded the list of behaviors that could be considered stalking. After his sentencing, Justin Thurbert continued to appeal the court's decision through his attorneys. One of their arguments was that Justin was mentally incompetent. In 2018, the Kansas Supreme Court stayed Thurbert's death sentence, citing a U.S. Supreme Court ruling regarding executions. In August 2021, the Kansas Supreme Court rejected Justin's appeal of his death sentence, leaving Justin Thurbert's death sentence in place. Notably, no one has been executed since Kansas reinstated the death penalty in 1994. The last time someone was executed in Kansas was in 1965. Since then, 9 other people besides Justin have been sentenced to death, but none have been executed. The Kansas Department of Corrections says it has not executed anyone in a long time and currently has no timeline for any future executions. So even if Justin's death sentence is upheld, the likelihood of it being carried out is very low. Jennifer Aldrich, the sister of a victim, said it was surprising that Kansas reinstated the death penalty more than 20 years ago but still has no concrete plan for executions. She hopes that discussions about the issue will take place when the death penalty is reinstated. Justin Thurber, 39, is currently incarcerated at the maximum security El Dorado Correctional Facility in Butler County, Kansas. The cost of keeping a death row inmate on death row is enormous, with an annual price tag of nearly $49,000 per inmate in administrative segregation at El Dorado. In addition, taxpayers pay higher costs when prosecutors seek the death penalty. The cost to prosecute a death penalty case is about $395,000, compared to $100,000 without the death penalty. Jody's family continues to face hardship and frustration as they wait for justice for their daughter, Jody. The situation is made worse by taxes, which they feel only add to their pain. Family members expressed feelings of helplessness and anger as they watched their tax dollars being used to support the person responsible for their daughter's death. Brian Sanderholm, Jody's father, expressed his anguish at seeing his wages being garnished for taxes, knowing that some of that money was being used to fund the perpetrator's existence. Brian believes that the law should be enforced and that perpetrators deserve to be punished for their actions. Cindy posed a poignant question: if this happened to your child, what would you want to happen? Before she passed away unexpectedly on December 2nd, 2022, at the age of 63. The family's ongoing fight for justice is now made all the more bitter without Cindy's presence. The case of Lynn Keel. Rexford Lynn Keel, commonly known as Lynn Keel, was married to Elizabeth Bess Edwards Keel for more than 20 years. In 2005, Lynn was a truck driver, while Elizabeth worked at Microbac Laboratories. Lynn and Elizabeth lived in a remote house in Nash County, North Carolina. As 2005 ended, they, like many others, were preparing for the new year. However, on January 1st, 2006, an unfortunate event occurred. It was a cold day, and the steps outside their house were icy. When Elizabeth stepped outside, she slipped and fell, striking her head on the concrete steps. The injury was severe and ultimately fatal. The medical examiner determined that Elizabeth died from blunt force trauma to the head, and her death was classified as an accident. Elizabeth's sudden death at the age of 42 shocked her husband, relatives, colleagues, and friends. A year later, Lynn Keel decided to move forward with his life. He transitioned from being a truck driver to working in real estate. In 2007, during a work trip to Latin America, Lynn, who was 45 at the time, met Diana, who was 19 years younger than him. Diana, a single mother from Bogota, Colombia, was not only beautiful but also kind. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and inspired by the idea of the American dream, Diana moved to the United States. Diana and Lynn moved into his home in Nash County, where his wife, Elizabeth Keel, had tragically passed away in an accident about a year earlier. Soon after, Diana and Lynn got married, and shortly afterward, they welcomed a son named Max. In 2017, Diana graduated from Nash Community College and started working as an emergency room nurse at Wilson Medical Center. The initial years of their marriage were unremarkable, but over time, their relationship began to decline. Diana confided in her close friend that Lynn was a controlling man who often spoke to her harshly and verbally abused her. The atmosphere in their home was consistently tense. Lynn wouldn't allow Diana to spend extended time alone with anyone. Although she started considering divorce, she felt scared of her husband due to his threats. He used their baby as a means of manipulation, warning her that if she left, he would deport her and she would never see her son again. Diana endured this situation for the sake of her children, but she knew that she also has the limits. In 2019, Diana's daughter from her previous marriage, Laura, was 18 years old. She had graduated from Southern Nash High School and was starting her freshman year at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Meanwhile, 10-year-old Max was living with his parents. Diana worked as a nurse at Wilson Medical Center, where she was well loved and respected by both her patients and colleagues. On March 7, 2019, Diana's mother, Esperanza Prada, who lived in Colombia, received an unexpected message from Diana that said, "Mom, I love you very much." Esperanza was aware that Diana was unhappy in her marriage and wanted to get a divorce, but she also knew that Diana was afraid of her husband. 3 days later, Laura, Diana's daughter, raised the alarm. On March 10th, she sent out a tweet asking for help to locate her mother. The tweet read, "This is unbelievable. You always see this happen to others and never think it could happen to you. My mom is missing. If you have any information, please let me know and retweet this to help spread the word. Thank you." On the same day, Laura contacted the medical center where her mother worked, but none of Diana's colleagues had seen or heard from her in the last 2 days. An employee at the medical center requested a welfare check on Diana after not hearing from her for days. She told that Diana was supposed to work that night and usually arrived 30 minutes early. She normally responded quickly to texts, but this time she hadn't replied. The nurse noted that this was unusual behavior for Diana, which led her to contact the sheriff's office for a welfare check. Diana was a devoted mother who communicated with her family every day, actively engaged on social media, but now her messages were unread and her FaceTime calls went unanswered. When a police officer arrived at the Keel family's home, Lynn was there. It was surprising that his wife's disappearance was reported to the police by her co-workers instead of by him. Lynn told the officer that he last saw Diana 2 days earlier, on March 8th, when she left the house. Since her car was still parked outside, this raised more suspicion, prompting the police to bring Lynn in for questioning. When asked where his wife was, 57-year-old Keel said she had gone out to run errands and hadn't returned yet. He noted that she sometimes left for a few days. However, his explanation raised suspicions. The man was released without facing any charges. The police to start a search for Diana. Investigators learned she hadn't used her cell phone or bank cards for several days, raising concern for her safety. Her house is in a secluded area with no neighbors who could assist the police. However, detectives found out that on the morning of March 8, Diana and her partner had a heated argument on their front porch. A courier, who delivered a package to Diana that day, was the last person to see her, apart from Lynn Keel. After interviewing Diana's co-workers, the police learned that she was experiencing problems with her husband. They believed she would never abandon her son or run away. Her main concern about getting a divorce was the fear of losing custody of her 10-year-old son. Every person the detective spoke to pointed to one potential suspect in Diana's disappearance, her husband, Lynn Keel. Early in the investigation, a troubling detail came to light. 2 years before Diana vanished, Lynn had taken out a life insurance policy on her for over $1 million, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. Furthermore, in 2008, sheriff's deputies were called to their home due to a domestic disturbance, but no further action was taken at that time. Just 2 days after the investigation began, the police received a disturbing call. An employee from the North Carolina Department of Transportation reported finding something on Pokes Hole Road. Sadly, the man had discovered Diana's body, which seemed to have been there since the day she went missing. He found it while checking an illegal dumping site. Pokes Hole Road is a dead-end street that leads to farmland. While it was a relief that the body was found, the word relief feels inadequate given the tragic circumstances. It's unclear how long it might have taken for the police to locate Diana's body, which was 30 miles away from her home. Nash County Sheriff Keith Stone shared his sadness about the situation, stating, "Everyone who knew her spoke very well of her. This is a tragic event. What makes it even more heartbreaking is that we now have a 10-year-old child who has lost her mother." He added, "This situation is very difficult. Life is delicate, and seeing a child left without her mother is extremely hard. We have many questions that still need answers, which is why the Nash County Sheriff's Office is approaching this case with compassion, integrity, and commitment. The circumstances surrounding her death are still unclear, but it was evident that foul play was involved. The police identified one primary suspect, Lynn Keel. Upon learning that his wife had been found dead, he expressed surprise. He was taken to the police station for questioning, where he spoke to investigators. Lynn maintained that Diana frequently left for several days but always came back. However, this contradicted statements from Diana's colleagues, family, and friends, who revealed that Lynn tightly controlled her life and even prevented her from seeing her friends. After the interrogation, Lynn was released because the autopsy results were not yet available. Diana's cousin, who lives in Colombia, shared with reporters that Diana moved to North Carolina to pursue the American dream, but instead, it turned into a nightmare. After the medical examiner's report was released, disturbing details about Diana's death emerged. She suffered severe skull fractures and had multiple sharp injuries on the left side of her face and neck. Some of these injuries occurred after her death, suggesting that the attacker may have had a personal vendetta against her. When the police arrived to arrest Lynn and search his home, he had already fled. He was placed on a nationwide wanted list, with reports indicating he might be driving a gold pickup truck and could be dangerous. After being questioned at the police station, Lynn drove his 10-year-old son to his parents' house, took his father's car, and escaped. During a search warrant executed at the home he shared with Diana, authorities confiscated various firearms, including rifles, pistols, and revolvers, as well as swords, a machete, and several knives. Authorities discovered 2 pages from the diary of Diana's 18-year-old daughter in a Dodge Ram owned by Lynn. When the sheriff was asked about the contents of those pages, he said he was not comfortable sharing that information. The search for Lynn was ongoing, and it was revealed that he had left the state, but his exact location was still unknown. Sheriff Stone mentioned that they had received tips regarding Lynn's truck from people in Texas and Florida, but no new information about his capture was confirmed. He urged the public to check local motels and hotels for a pickup truck matching the license plate number provided in a public notice. On March 17, 2019, just 5 days after Diana's body was found, Arizona State Police arrested Lynn, 34 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. He had a large amount of cash and many canned goods, suggesting he intended to cross into Mexico. Following his arrest, he was airlifted to Nash County and faced charges related to his wife Diana's death. Forensic investigators discovered significant evidence that Diana's attack occurred in the bedroom. The prosecutor stated that after taking Diana to a secluded spot, Lynn went to a nearby Walmart and purchased cleaning supplies in an attempt to erase any traces of the crime. In October 2021, Rexford Lynn Keel, 59, pleaded no contest to charges against him in order to avoid a lengthy trial. A no contest plea is similar to a guilty plea, meaning that the defendant accepts responsibility for the charges. Lynn admitted to second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. His defense attorneys requested the judge to consider his kidney failure as mitigating factors during sentencing. Diana's mother addressed the court, emphasizing the loss of her daughter and urging women in abusive relationships to seek safety. She appealed to the judge for a strict sentence. Diana's cousin issued a statement from the family expressing gratitude to law enforcement for capturing Lynn, the suspect in Diana's murder. They conveyed their appreciation for the compassion shown by the Nash County Sheriff's Office and the support they had received. The cousin described Diana as an amazing mother, daughter, sister, and friend, noting that her love for her children was boundless and that she brought joy to everyone with her laughter and kindness. They asked everyone to remember Diana and her children with positive thoughts and thanked everyone for their support. Lynn did not share his reasons for committing the crime. It's possible he discovered that Diana was meeting with a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Additionally, there is the matter of the insurance policy worth over $1 million. Under a plea agreement, Lynn was sentenced to 32 to 41 years in prison. Moreover, police are investigating the death of Lynn's first wife, Elizabeth. There are lingering questions about whether her death was truly an accident. Her family has expressed ongoing concerns and sadness regarding her death. In their statement, they noted their sorrow that another life has been lost and that they have always questioned the circumstances surrounding Elizabeth's passing. Stone, a law enforcement official, stated, "We are going to pursue all leads concerning this matter, and we will review the initial incident reports." He added that discussions with the district attorney's office are necessary. Elizabeth is buried in a family plot in Spring Hope. Stone is collaborating with a pathologist and reviewing the evidence, indicating that exhuming Elizabeth's body is a strong possibility. Dr. John Butts, who served as North Carolina's chief medical examiner for 24 years, explained that exhuming a body is typically done when there are unresolved questions that could be clarified by re-examining the remains. He shared that there have been instances where deaths initially ruled as accidents turned out to be homicides. For example, someone who falls to their death may later be found to have been pushed. The examination results would remain the same, but the context surrounding the incident would shift significantly. Despite this, Dr. Butts noted that there has been no new information regarding Elizabeth's death in the past 2 years. This suggests that authorities may not have found grounds to reopen the investigation or exhume the body at this time, but there could be further developments in the case in the future.